On April 2, 2021, the world of 6-year-old Cory Michielo was abruptly shattered in a home that was meant to be his sanctuary. His untimely death sent shockwaves through the small town in New Jersey and reverberated across the nation. What initially appeared to be a tragic accident unfolded into a harrowing tale of cruelty, indifference, and the systemic blindness of a system designed to protect children like Cory. At first glance, this family seemed unremarkable. His mother, Brianna Michielo, was a strong and nurturing woman who devoted her life to her son. His father, Christopher Greger, outwardly presented himself as a model parent. Yet behind closed doors, their family concealed numerous issues that no one wished to acknowledge until it was far too late. Cory Michielo was born in 2014 in New Jersey, into a family that, at first glance, appeared to be thriving. His mother, Brianna Michielo, aspired to provide her son with the very best. From the outset, she was wholly devoted to nurturing him, striving to create a warm and stable environment. However, Christopher Greger, the boy's father, frequently exhibited signs of strictness and control that troubled Brianna. From the beginning, he displayed a strong character that sometimes veered into aggression. Despite this, the first few years of Cory's life were relatively peaceful. Brianna endeavored to shield her son from any conflicts and dedicated all her time to his upbringing. From the moment of Cory's birth, his mother assumed full responsibility for his development. She described her son as a cheerful and inquisitive boy who adored drawing, playing with toy cars, and listening to bedtime stories. He quickly bonded with other children and loved spending time at the playground. "He was my happiness, my joy," Brianna later recounted in an interview. Cory's life began to change after his parents officially divorced in 2019. The divorce was fraught with conflicts, increasingly centered around custody issues. Brianna insisted that Christopher was unfit to be a full-time caregiver due to his character and behavior, but the court ruled otherwise. In 2020, the court decided on joint custody, granting Christopher the right to regular visitation with his son. For Brianna, this decision was a devastating blow, as she knew that behind the facade of a composed and balanced man lay a harsh and, at times, volatile individual. After the visitation began, Cory started to change. Brianna noticed that her son became more withdrawn, often appeared depressed and anxious. He smiled less frequently, and his interest in play and socializing with friends noticeably waned. One day, Cory confided in his mother that he was afraid of his father. He recounted how Christopher forced him to do things he did not want to do and sometimes punished him for simple childhood mischief. "He yelled at me and said I was bad," Cory shared during one of those conversations. Brianna began to notice bruises on her son's body that he could not explain. Initially, she thought they might be typical childhood injuries, but it soon became evident that the injuries occurred more frequently when Cory spent time with his father. She reached out to social services, voicing her concerns, but was told there was insufficient evidence for any action. Social service workers claimed that Christopher had no history of violence, and therefore, they had no grounds to intervene. However, Brianna refused to give up. She continued to seek help, trying to find a way to protect her son. Despite Brianna's efforts, the system continued to ignore the obvious signals. Cory remained in his father's custody, and with each visit, Brianna's anxiety only intensified. Gradually, Brianna began to feel as though she was losing control of the situation. Her words were not taken seriously, and Christopher's actions remained shrouded in darkness. All she could do was wait, hoping that nothing terrible would happen to her son. But the situation only worsened. Each new incident went unnoticed, and the system designed to protect children like Cory repeatedly failed. After the court's decision in 2020, Cory's life changed dramatically. He now spent regular time with his father, Christopher Greger. For Brianna, this became a true test. She knew her son did not want to be with his father, yet she felt powerless to change the situation. The court's decision seemed final, and her repeated appeals to social services yielded no results. From the very first weeks of joint custody, Brianna noticed that Corey returned from his father's house feeling dejected and exhausted. Her concern deepened when the boy began to fear discussing what transpired in Christopher's home. One day, after returning from his father's, Corey confessed that Christopher had made him do push-ups for a minor infraction. "Mom, I'm tired. Dad says I have to be strong," he said quietly. For a 6-year-old, such punishments were excessively harsh, and Brianna realized that her fears were beginning to materialize. She once again contacted social services, detailing the changes in her son's behavior and instances of physical punishment. But her reports met with the same response: insufficient evidence. The agency staff believed that the punishments Brianna described could be elements of strict parenting, rather than abuse. Corey not only endured physical punishment but also began to experience significant psychological pressure. Christopher, as it later emerged, compelled him to remain silent about what transpired at home. The boy became increasingly withdrawn, fearing that any word he uttered would provoke his father's wrath. "I saw him becoming a different person. It was as if my cheerful, open son had been replaced," Brianna recalled later. Corey began to evade his mother's inquiries about his time with his father. Sometimes he cried before visits, pleading not to be left there, but Brianna felt powerless to intervene. Despite the lack of response from social services, Brianna decided to contact the police. In one of her statements, she described an incident where Corey returned home with visible signs of abuse on his arms and legs. The police conducted a superficial investigation, but it ended with merely a conversation with Christopher. He insisted that he had never harmed his son and attributed the bruises to active play. Without further evidence, the police also chose not to intervene. The court's decision, coupled with the inaction of social services and the police's distrust, took its toll. Brianna felt powerless. The system that was supposed to protect her son seemed to ignore the obvious signs of violence. Child Protective Services limited their involvement to infrequent visits and superficial checks. They spoke with Christopher but failed to conduct thorough investigations. None of them asked Corey what happened when he was with his father. Yet, Brianna continued to fight. She kept a journal, documenting everything that transpired with her son. Her entries noted his words, bruises, and anxious behavior. She hoped that one day this evidence would help her save her child. As time passed, the warning signs became increasingly apparent. But instead of offering assistance, the system remained passive. All Brianna could do was watch as her son slowly faded away. The onset of joint custody marked a point of no return. Brianna sensed that the situation was spiraling out of control, but despite her efforts, no one wanted to hear her voice. March 2021 became a critical juncture in the tragic story of Corey Micciolo. During this period, events unfolded that could have saved the boy had the child protection system and law enforcement paid attention. One such incident occurred on March 20th at a gym, where Christopher Greger decided to employ harsh methods of discipline on his son. Christopher Greger was known for his passion for sports. He frequently visited the gym, claiming to maintain his physical fitness. However, that day was different. He chose to bring along 6-year-old Corey. Witnesses in the gym later recounted that Christopher's behavior towards the boy appeared strange. He forced Corey to run on the treadmill, despite the child's complaints of fatigue. When Corey began to plead for a break, Christopher raised his voice and ordered him to continue. "You need to be strong, stop being a weakling," he allegedly told his son, according to eyewitness accounts. Surveillance footage, which later became crucial evidence, showed the boy struggling on the treadmill while his father stood nearby, watching the ordeal. Some gym-goers noticed the situation and attempted to intervene. One staff member approached Christopher, trying to convince him that the child looked tired and needed to rest. But Greger dismissed him, asserting that this was his son and he would raise him as he saw fit. After the incident, one witness decided to report what had transpired to social services. However, as had happened before, their response was the same. "Well, look into it." Brianna, learning of the incident, was furious. She contacted the police again, providing them with this information, but once more, no significant action was taken. This incident left a mark on Corey. He became even more withdrawn and anxious. Brianna recounted that her son complained of leg pain and expressed fear of his father. "I don't want to go to him anymore, Mom, please," he would say before another visit. She tried everything to prove that her son was in danger. In addition to her statements, she submitted the surveillance footage from the gym, but even that was insufficient. She was once again told that the evidence was inadequate. The gym incident became yet another missed opportunity to prevent tragedy. The surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and Brianna's statements were all ignored. For social services, it was merely another case unworthy of attention. Corey's fate increasingly depended on the actions of an adult who was supposed to care for him but instead became a source of fear and pain. All Brianna could do was continue to fight. But time passed, and the situation worsened. April 2021 brought the most tragic events in the life of Corey Micciolo and his family. All the warning signs that had been ignored for months reached a breaking point. The events that transpired just days before the boy's death later became central to the criminal case against his father, Christopher Greger. On April 1, 2021, the day before Corey's death, Brianna insisted on a doctor's visit. She noticed that the boy appeared tired and depressed, also complaining of stomach and leg pain. She was concerned that his physical condition deteriorated after each visit with his father. The pediatrician, upon examining Corey, noted bruises on his arms and legs. However, according to Brianna, the doctor did not ask further questions about the origin of these injuries. The mother urged attention to possible abuse, but no specific conclusions or actions were taken. The medical report merely noted general exhaustion and signs of bruising. Brianna was convinced that these were the consequences of time spent with Christopher. Yet the system continued to remain deaf to her pleas. On the morning of April 2, Corey was scheduled to spend the day with his father, as usual. According to Brianna, the boy cried, begging her not to let him go. "I'm scared, Mom, don't leave me there," he said before leaving with Christopher. That day became Corey's last. In the evening, Brianna received the devastating news her son had died. Christopher reported a tragic accident that occurred in his home. Christopher claimed that Corey had felt unwell while playing and fell from a height. He stated that he immediately called for an ambulance, but the medics could not save the boy. However, the details of this account quickly began to raise doubts among investigators. There were no obvious signs at the scene indicating that Corey had fallen. On the contrary, a later medical examination revealed multiple injuries, including broken ribs and internal damage that could not be explained by a simple fall. For Brianna, this news was not just a tragedy but a confirmation of her worst fears. She immediately declared that this was not an accident but a result of Christopher's abuse. "I tried to save him. I screamed about it to everyone who could help, but no one listened to me," she would later tell reporters. Brianna insisted on a full investigation, and soon investigators had grounds to suspect that Corey's death might have been intentional. Forensic experts determined that Corey died from internal injuries that could have been caused by severe physical trauma. These injuries, according to experts, were inconsistent with a simple household accident. Moreover, old bruises and marks were found on the child's body, indicating systematic abuse. This became a pivotal moment in the investigation, directing suspicion towards Christopher. After his son's death, Christopher avoided communication with the police and journalists. He maintained his innocence, claiming he did everything possible to save the child. However, his silence and lack of cooperation with authorities only heightened suspicions. Corey's death not only shattered Brianna's life but also stirred the local community. Everyone began to question why no one had helped this boy despite the obvious signs of danger. Corey Micciolo's death immediately drew the attention of law enforcement. Although Christopher Greger's initial account of an accident sounded like an attempt to justify himself, the results of the medical examination revealed a new picture of the tragedy. This marked the beginning of a complex and meticulous investigation that, a year later, led to the arrest of the boy's father. Forensic experts who examined Corey's body provided a detailed report that became key evidence in the case. It was established that the boy died from multiple internal injuries, ruptured organs, and broken ribs. A crucial detail in the report was that the nature of the injuries did not align with the account of a simple fall. Furthermore, old injuries were found on the child's body, indicating systematic physical abuse. Forensic experts emphasized that most of the injuries had been inflicted long before the day of his death, contradicting Christopher's account of an accident. The police, upon receiving the results of the examination, commenced the collection of evidence that could either confirm or refute the guilt of Christopher Greger. During the investigation, they reached out to Brianna Micciolo, who elaborated on her concerns, her long-standing complaints, and the inaction of social services. Her words became the foundation for the charges. Brianna provided her diary, in which she documented all instances that caused her distress. She also submitted surveillance footage from the gym, where Christopher forced Corey to run on the treadmill. This footage became crucial evidence of his abusive behavior. As the investigation progressed, additional facts emerged. The police examined the history of social service visits and discovered that several complaints against Christopher had been registered in the year leading up to Corey's death. However, none had been adequately addressed. Furthermore, investigators found witnesses who confirmed that Christopher Greger frequently exhibited aggression towards his son. One neighbor recounted hearing loud screams from Christopher's home, while Corey himself appeared frightened and dejected. Nearly a year was spent gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing medical data. In March 2022, the police issued an arrest warrant for Christopher Greger. He was apprehended at his residence and taken to the station for questioning. Greger denied his guilt, insisting that he had never harmed his son and claiming that Corey's death was a tragic accident. However, the evidence collected, including examination results, witness testimonies, and Brianna's complaints, formed the basis for the charges. Christopher Greger faced multiple charges, including child abuse, infliction of bodily harm leading to death, and negligence in fulfilling parental duties. Since his arrest, he remained in custody, as the court deemed that his release on bail could pose a threat to society. The prosecution prepared a case to demonstrate that Corey's death was not an accident but rather the result of systematic violence. For Brianna Micciolo, Christopher's arrest marked a significant step towards justice, yet she still struggled to cope with the loss of her son. "I tried to protect him. I told everyone who would listen that Corey was in danger, but no one responded. This should not have happened," she stated in an interview. She hoped that Corey's case would serve as an example of the importance of listening to the voices of those trying to protect their children. Her fight for justice had only just begun, and she was determined to see it through to the end. The trial of Christopher Greger commenced in 2024, 3 years after Corey Micciolo's death. The entire nation followed the case, which became a symbol of injustice and the inaction of social services. For Corey's mother, Brianna Micciolo, it was an opportunity to seek justice for her son and draw attention to the systemic issues that led to the tragedy. The prosecution meticulously prepared for the trial, gathering extensive evidence of Christopher's guilt. Key elements of the case included: medical findings. Experts insisted that Corey's injuries could not have been sustained accidentally. Their nature indicated repeated physical abuse. Gym surveillance footage. The recordings showing Christopher forcing the boy to run on the treadmill reinforced claims of his cruel treatment of the child. Witness testimonies. Neighbors and acquaintances confirmed that Christopher exhibited aggressive and controlling behavior towards his son. Brianna's records, the diary in which Corey's mother documented all instances of abuse, became vital evidence in court. Gregor's defense attempted to challenge this material, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial. The defense attorney insisted that Corey's death was a tragic accident and that the prosecution was trying to paint a picture of an aggressive father based on biased opinions. During the hearings, prosecutors presented a series of witnesses whose testimonies bolstered the prosecution's case. One such witness was a gym employee who recounted how Christopher Gregor forced Corey to train despite clear signs of exhaustion. The boy cried and begged to stop, but the father yelled at him. It was cruel, the witness stated. Neighbor testimonies also proved significant. One neighbor reported hearing screams from Christopher's home, while another had seen Corey with bruises. The climax of the trial came with Brianna Micciolo's testimony. Her words shook the courtroom as she recounted her years of trying to save her son, reaching out to social services and the police, only to be met with indifference. I warned that Corey was in danger. I did everything I could to protect him, but no one wanted to listen, she said. Brianna provided recordings of conversations with her son, where he shared his fears about visiting his father. These recordings served as an emotional reminder of what the boy had endured.
And I appear before you today not only as a grieving mother, but also an advocate for justice. On behalf of my son Corey, I stand here before you to plead for justice that Corey rightfully deserves, and to press for the maximum sentence of Christopher Gregor, whose actions have inflicted irreparable harm in our lives. For you to fully understand the gravity of the situation, I will flash back to the July of 2013. At 16, I first met the defendant, who was 21 at the time. He proceeded to feed me drugs, alcohol, and took complete advantage of me, which led to the conception of Corey. From day one of my pregnancy, I knew I would keep Corey, regardless of the way he was conceived. There are countless reasons Christopher deserves the maximum sentence. He rejected what I considered a generous plea deal, which shows how selfish and ignorant he is as a person. I beg you to not allow this injustice to continue, and he must face the full consequences of his actions. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Your Honor.
Gregor's defense sought to portray him as a strict but loving father, arguing that his parenting methods might have been harsh, but that did not make him guilty of his son's death. The defense contended that the injuries could have resulted from an accident, and old bruises were merely the consequences of childhood play. The attorney attempted to convince the jurors that the prosecution was building its case on emotions rather than facts. However, questions from the prosecutor directed at Christopher during his testimony led to his confusion. When asked to explain the nature of the injuries found on Corey, Gregor could not provide a clear answer. The trial lasted several weeks, during which the jurors heard all the evidence, witness testimonies, and arguments from both sides. After 3 days of deliberation, they rendered a verdict. Christopher Gregor was found guilty of child abuse and infliction of bodily harm leading to death. The courtroom erupted in applause at the verdict, and Brianna could not hold back her tears. This was a long-awaited moment of justice for Corey, but also a reminder that her son's life could never be restored. In August 2024, Christopher Gregor appeared before the judge for sentencing. This day marked the culmination of a long and painful journey towards justice. For Corey's family and the public following the trial, it was a moment that should have brought closure to the case. Addressing the defendant, the judge emphasized, "You not only let down your son but also abused your position, turning paternal love into a source of pain and fear." Christopher Gregor was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. The sentence was based on charges of child abuse and intentional infliction of injuries leading to death. Brianna Micciolo was present in the courtroom. When the judge announced the sentence, she broke down in tears. "This won't bring my son back, but at least Christopher can no longer harm anyone," she later told reporters. The court's decision sparked widespread public resonance. Many viewed this case not only as a tragedy for one family but also as a symbol of deeper issues within the child protection system. discussions erupted on social media about how to prevent similar cases in the future. Thousands expressed support for Brianna, commending her courage in the fight for justice. However, many also questioned why the system allowed a child to find himself in a situation that led to his demise. After the conclusion of the court proceedings, Brianna Micciello resolved to dedicate her life to advocating for reforms in the child protection system. She initiated a campaign aimed at drawing attention to the shortcomings of social services and the necessity for a re-evaluation of custody laws. "I cannot bring Corey back, but I can do everything in my power to ensure that no other child endures what my son experienced," she stated at one of the events. Brianna began collaborating with attorneys, activists, and legislators to push for stricter regulations concerning families at risk of violence. Her efforts helped to spotlight the issue and laid the groundwork for the initial steps toward change. Despite her courtroom victory, Brianna's life was irrevocably altered. The loss of her son left an indelible mark on her soul. She often shared memories of Corey. "He was the kindest and brightest child. I now live solely to ensure that his death was not in vain." Brianna organized several events in memory of Corey, including an annual day of awareness for domestic violence. These gatherings not only preserved the memory of the boy but also served as a platform to raise awareness about the issue. Following Corey's case, New Jersey began to reassess the policies governing social services. Training programs were launched for staff to help identify instances of violence. Additionally, new laws aimed at enhancing child protection, particularly in custody disputes, were discussed. However, despite these changes, Brianna continued to assert that much work remained to be done. "The system is broken. We must fix it, or it will happen again," she declared. 3 years have passed since the tragic death of Corey Micciello. During this time, his story has become a symbol of compassion and the fight for justice. This case not only transformed the lives of his family but also brought to light systemic issues faced by hundreds of children and their parents. After the court proceedings, Brianna Micciello dedicated her life to her son's memory. In 2024, immediately following the sentencing of Christopher Greger, she established a charitable foundation aimed at preventing domestic violence. The Corey Micciello Foundation provides support to children who have experienced abuse, assists their families in obtaining legal aid, and engages in educational activities. Every year on April 2nd, the day of Corey's remembrance, the foundation organizes gatherings that bring together activists, social workers, local officials, and residents of New Jersey. These events not only help to keep the memory of the boy alive but also serve as a reminder that child protection systems still require reform. "My son was so kind and loving. I want his name to become a symbol of change. I want children in danger to know that they will be heard," Brianna says. Corey's case stirred public sentiment and became a catalyst for changes in the child protection system. In New Jersey, the development of reforms began, including stricter oversight of families where reports of violence are made. Training programs for social workers aimed at early detection of threats to children were implemented. At the legislative level, discussions commenced regarding amendments that would strengthen the role of parents expressing concern for their children's safety. However, despite these steps, activists and lawyers emphasize that the journey toward establishing a reliable child protection system has only just begun. The Corey case illustrates how crucial it is not to ignore even the slightest warning signs. "Every missed case could cost a child their life," noted a representative from New Jersey's social services. For Brianna Micciello, the loss of her son remains an unhealed wound. Each day, she recalls his smile, his love for play, and his dreams. But rather than retreating into her grief, Brianna chose to fight so that no one else would endure what she has experienced. Her speeches at conferences, interviews, and work with legislators have become an integral part of her life. "I cannot bring Corey back, but I can ensure that his story saves other children. That is the only thing that helps me move forward," she said in an interview. The name Corey Micciello has become a symbol of compassion and the fight for children's rights. His story is studied in law schools, discussed in professional circles of social services, and utilized by activists to draw attention to issues of domestic violence. Every change prompted by this tragedy serves as a reminder that even the briefest life can alter the world. Corey was a little boy with a big heart. His life was cut short too soon, but his legacy helps other children. That is all I can dream of now, Brianna says. The case of Corey Micciolo has highlighted the importance of listening to the voices of those who protect their children. This tragic story has become not only a reminder of the fragility of childhood but also a call to action. Corey's memory lives on in the hearts of his mother, friends, and those who strive to ensure that such a tragedy never occurs again. The story of Gabrielle Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie is a tragic chronicle that resonated widely, capturing the attention of the media and the public across the globe. This young couple, inspired by dreams of freedom and travel, aspired to become part of the digital generation of van life individuals documenting their journeys around the world on social media. However, their dreams were brutally cut short, leaving numerous questions and sparking public discourse on domestic violence, mental health, and the role of law enforcement. Gabby Petito was born on March 19, 1999, in Blue Point, New York, to Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt. She was the eldest of 6 children, an active and creative young woman with aspirations of a career in the arts and media. Gabby had a passion for nature, photography, and travel, inspiring her friends and social media followers with her optimism. Brian Laundrie, Gabby's peer, grew up in Florida in a family that valued nature and the arts. He was fond of drawing and hiking. Gabby and Brian met in high school in Blue Point and began dating in 2019. Shortly thereafter, Gabby moved to Florida to live with Brian and his parents. In July 2020, the couple got engaged but later decided to postpone their wedding, focusing instead on travel and shared projects. In July 2021, Gabby and Brian embarked on their most ambitious journey, a cross-country road trip. They purchased a white Ford Transit van, which they outfitted for life on the road. Their plan was to explore the national parks of the United States, revel in nature, and share their adventures on social media. Their Instagram and YouTube channel, titled Nomadic Static, garnered attention for its stunning photographs and videos, showcasing the couple as happy and enthusiastic. The posts were accompanied by inspiring comments about a love for nature, freedom, and harmony. However, as later revealed, beneath this idyllic facade lay tensions and issues that gradually surfaced. Gabby dreamed of building a career in social media, making travel the cornerstone of her professional life. For Brian, this journey was an opportunity to challenge himself and enjoy the simplicity of life on the road. However, their expectations and goals began to diverge, setting the stage for conflict. Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie commenced their long-awaited journey on July 2, 2021, departing from Florida in their white Ford Transit van. Their route included visits to some of the most picturesque locations in the United States: national parks, mountains, deserts, and other natural wonders. This journey was intended to last several months, culminating in a visit to the West Coast. Before setting off, Gabby and Brian meticulously prepared for the trip. They gathered all essentials for life on wheels, from kitchenware to camping gear. The van was equipped with a sleeping area, a small workspace, and storage for their belongings. Gabby diligently documented each stage of the preparation, posting photos and videos on social media to engage her followers in her journey. The first weeks of their trip were blissful. The couple visited Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee, where they enjoyed hiking and exploring forest trails. They then headed west, stopping in Colorado and Utah. Gabby's posts reflected her excitement, breathtaking views, nights under the stars, and moments of joy together. However, there were no signs on social media indicating that cracks were beginning to form in their relationship. As they progressed westward, Gabby and Brian's itinerary became increasingly ambitious. They planned to visit Arizona, Nevada, and California, but spent much of their time in Utah, exploring renowned sites such as Bryce Canyon and Arches National Parks. These weeks were memorable for Gabby's followers, marked by a series of vibrant and beautiful posts depicting the couple against stunning landscapes. Nevertheless, friends and family of Gabby began to notice changes in her behavior. In some video calls, she appeared tired and tense, yet insisted that everything was going according to plan. She spoke passionately about her dreams and claimed that the journey was opening new horizons for her. Despite the apparent idyll, the reality of the trip was becoming increasingly complex. Life in the van, limited space, and the necessity of making numerous decisions together bred conflicts. Although Brian and Gabby endeavored to maintain a friendly demeanor, the tension between them began to manifest, particularly in their interactions with others. On August 12, 2021, residents of Moab, Utah, witnessed a troubling incident involving Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. The police received the call from a witness who reported observing a conflict between a man and a woman. The witness claimed to have seen the man strike the woman, after which the couple entered their white van and drove away. This call marked the beginning of official intervention in their personal lives. Police stopped Gabby and Brian's van on a highway near Arches National Park. Body camera footage from the officers later became a key element of public discussion.
Go ahead and turn it off for me. What's your guys' names?
Gabby.
Brian.
Gabby, Brian? Okay. What's going on? How come you're crying? I'm gonna go ahead and close your door. Okay?
Some days I have really bad OCD, and
Okay.
I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him, I just like, I guess my vibe is like, I am really like in a bad mood. And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to work at an organic juice bar, but I just quit my job.
Okay.
I was a nutritionist. That's
Oh,
what
okay.
that was my
That's
job.
cool.
And I don't know. We just been fighting all morning, and and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
Why wouldn't you let you in the car? Because
told
of
me
your
I
OCD?
told me I needed to calm down. Yeah. But I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time, and he really stresses me out. And this is a rough morning.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't I sit you down in the back seat of my car? You're not in any trouble, okay? I'm not going to be putting handcuffs on you. You obviously don't have any weapons. I'm going to get you into the air conditioning, let you take a breath, relax a little bit, and then I'll come back and talk to you in a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
Alrighty. Like I said, you're not in any trouble. So try and take a seat. What's that?
You talked to Gabby already?
Yeah, I just spoke to her.
Yeah.
So, you want to do me a favor? Let's go ahead and get you to step out of the vehicle, alrighty? You want to tell me about those scratches on your face?
She had her cell phone in her hand. That's why I was pushing her away. Because she wanted I locked the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not, go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute because she was getting really worked up. And then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys from me, so I grabbed away. I was just trying to, I know I shouldn't push, but I was just trying to push her away to go, let's just take a minute, step back and breathe. And she got me with her phone.
Can I see your hand? Oh, you got a mark right here.
Oh, that's from a wire.
That's from a wire?
Yeah.
You want to tell me about hitting that curb?
Hitting the curb was her grabbing the wheel.
She grabbed the wheel?
Yeah. She said, I can't believe we're getting pulled over, and then she grabbed the wheel.
He just grabbed it. Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, but then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you. Because where did he hit you? Don't worry. Be honest.
I
She started hitting him.
Yeah, I was yelling at him, and then when you turned your lights on, I kind of punched his arm like there's a idiot.
She's saying like hit the curb. You said it was Gabby?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I remember that name. It was Gabby?
Yeah.
I've decided I am not going to cite you for domestic violence battery, okay? It was only going to be a Class B misdemeanor. However, the domestic violence portion of it enhances it. makes life a major pain in the butt, especially you're 22, right? So I'm choosing not to cite you today. So you are not going to be charged with anything. Alright? But this is what I do have to do. I am separating the two of you tonight. Okay? I want you guys both to be tonight away from each other, relax, breathe, crying, because there's no reason to be crying now, okay? You're going to be taking the van tonight, and you're going to go somewhere else. I am going to get him lined up for the hotel room tonight. I want you guys to stay away from each other. For both of you guys the same. From what you told me and what he told me, you guys have a bunch of little things that are building up, and finally the little string that you guys were tight walking on the road tonight. Does that sound about right? So, I just want everybody to breathe, get a chance away from each other, go eat a meal, talk to your parents, whatever it is you gotta do. Alright, we're here. Tyson?
Yep.
Officer Robin Spill called for me.
He did, yes.
This is Brian Laundrie.
Alright.
So he's going to get you all set up with your hotel room, and he's going to take care of it from here.
Alright. Well,
Alrighty?
thank you so
And
much.
like I said, just remember my requests. I think it'll make a big difference in your guys' next couple weeks at the very least.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for everything.
No problem. It's nice to meet you, Brian.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good one.
Alright, so sorry.
The video captured the emotional state of both. Gabby was crying and appeared despondent, while Brian tried to remain calm but avoided direct answers. In the video, Gabby explained that they had argued over travel planning and content creation for social media. She admitted to suffering from anxiety and blamed herself for the conflict. Brian, in turn, claimed that he had tried to calm Gabby and prevent escalation. The police noticed scratches on Brian's face, which he attributed to Gabby becoming angry and attacking him. After speaking with the couple, the police decided not to file charges, as they did not consider the incident a serious crime. However, to prevent a potential recurrence of conflict, they suggested separating the couple for the night. Gabby stayed in the van, while Brian was placed in a budget hotel provided by local social services. This incident sparked heated discussions when the video footage became public. Some believe that the police overlooked significant signs of potential violence in the relationship. Others argued that the situation was difficult to assess, as both participants appeared emotionally unstable. Gabby contacted her parents the following day, recounting the incident. Her mother, Nicole Schmidt, later admitted to being worried, but Gabby reassured her that everything was fine and that the journey would continue. Immediately after the incident in Moab, Gabby and Brian resumed their travels, but the atmosphere between them became noticeably tenser. They headed to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, one of the key points on their route. This period marked the last traceable evidence of their interactions with the outside world and their social media posts. On August 25th, Gabby posted her final updates on Instagram. In the photos, she posed in front of the iconic natural landmarks of Grand Teton National Park. The captions appeared joyful and did not reveal any tension. This day also marked the last time Gabby spoke with her mother, Nicole Schmidt, via video call. In the conversation, Gabby looked tired but did not mention any problems. Nicole recalled that her daughter spoke of continuing the route and remained optimistic. In the following days, Gabby's communication with her loved one ceased. Her parents, accustomed to her regular calls, began to worry when her messages became brief and strange. On August 27th, Gabby's mother received a text from her phone stating, "Can you help Stan?" in getting his voicemails and texts. Stan is Gabby's grandfather, but she had never referred to him by name. Nicole sensed something was amiss but still hoped it was a simple mistake. The last known confirmation of Gabby's presence was on August 27th, when her van was spotted by a family at a campsite near Grand Teton National Park. These witnesses later reported that they noticed the van due to its distinctive appearance and license plate, which matched the one shown in the news. On September 1, 2021, Brian Laundrie returned home to Florida, where his parents lived. He arrived in the very van that the couple had used for their travels, but without Gabby. Gabby's parents began attempting to contact Brian and his family to inquire about their daughter's whereabouts, but their calls and messages went unanswered. The Laundrie family, including Brian, declined any interaction with Gabby's relatives. They also refrained from notifying the police about her disappearance. Instead, Brian hired an attorney and began to evade questions related to the incident. Concerned by the sudden cessation of contact, Gabby's parents reported her missing to the police on September 11th. This action initiated an official investigation and a widespread public campaign to locate Gabby Petito. Following the filing of the missing person report on September 11, 2021, events began to unfold rapidly. Distressed by Gabby's disappearance, her parents actively collaborated with the police and appealed to the public for assistance. During this time, the actions of the Laundrie family and Brian's behavior came under intense scrutiny and criticism. After Gabby's disappearance, her family did everything possible to draw attention to her search. They began posting photos of Gabby on social media, using hashtags and calls for information dissemination. Her mother, Nicole Schmidt, and father, Joseph Petito, gave several interviews pleading with the public to help find their daughter. The day after the report was filed, on September 12, Gabby's parents held a press conference. They addressed Brian Laundrie, urging him to share any information regarding their daughter's whereabouts. Nicole stated, "We just want to know where our daughter is. If Brian or his family knows anything, they should come forward." The family also expressed confusion and outrage over the Laundrie's refusal to cooperate with the police. When the police arrived at the Laundrie home to question Brian, his parents refused to let the officers in, stating that communication would only occur through their attorney.
You don't want to talk to us? Okay, she's on the phone. You don't want to talk to her now? Okay, when was the last time that you saw Brian and Gabriel?
Well, Brian is here.
Brian is here?
Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say.
And that's all that you're saying?
Yeah, we have an attorney. They've been calling, I don't know. That's all I want to say. I don't know why so many attorneys are aware
Okay.
they're calling, so I can give you his number.
Whose number? The attorney's number?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like that, please, so I can give it to the detective. Thank you.
Chris, this is Sergeant Selzer with the police department.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I hate to bother you. I know you've already said you don't want to speak or don't want to help us. I'm trying to figure out something for parents. You guys as parents, all they want is their daughter to know that she's safe. So I don't know where it all started before. I don't know what's transpired. I don't know anything about that. I'm here to know if you guys know anything. It would let the parents at ease and go from there.
Well, we don't know anything.
Okay.
And that's all.
I mean, anything that you guys would be able to give them is any type of help. Last time your son saw her, anything like that. Am I able to talk to your son? The other officer said
he's not going to talk to him.
Okay.
We've not.
Brian provided no explanations regarding Gabby's whereabouts, and his refusal to cooperate raised suspicions. On September 14th, the Laundrie family's attorney issued a brief statement claiming that Brian hopes for Gabby's successful recovery, but due to legal risks, he would not be making any comments. This statement only intensified the criticism directed at the Laundrie family. The public and Gabby's loved ones perceived Brian's silence as an attempt to conceal his guilt. Meanwhile, the police continued their investigation. The van the couple traveled in was seized for forensic examination. Investigators found some of Gabby's personal belongings inside the van, but nothing that immediately indicated her location. Information about Gabby's disappearance quickly spread through the media and social networks. Posts featuring her photos and story flooded platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Users shared their theories, discussed Brian's behavior, and sought to assist in the search. The hashtag #FindGabbyPetito went viral, drawing attention to the case. Vloggers, travelers, and activists analyzed available materials, including social media posts and surveillance videos. Some even began searching for potential evidence in their own archives if they happened to be in the same locations as the couple. Investigators focused on the route the couple had taken in the weeks leading up to the incident and attempted to reconstruct the timeline of events. Local authorities in Utah, Wyoming, and Florida were involved. The Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) also joined the case. A pivotal moment came with witness statements indicating that they had seen Gabby's and Brian's van in the Spread Creek camping area near Grand Teton National Park on August 27. This location became a primary focus of search operations. After the police received information about Gabby Petito's possible whereabouts in the Spread Creek camping area, search operations concentrated in that region. On September 15, 2021, a search team was formed, comprising local police, the FBI, and volunteers. Helicopters, drones, and search dogs were employed to scour the vast terrain, which included mountain trails, forests, and bodies of water. Meanwhile, Gabby's family continued to draw public attention. They launched a social media campaign, organized fundraising efforts to finance the search, and maintained close contact with the police. Joseph Petito, Gabby's father, urged people to share any information that could assist in the search. On September 19, 2021, the search efforts yielded results. During an operation in the Bridger Teton National Forest, near the Spread Creek camping area, a body matching Gabby Petito's description was discovered. The body was located in a secluded area near a trail, and external signs indicated that death had occurred several weeks prior. On the same day, the FBI confirmed that the remains belonged to a young woman fitting Gabby's description. On September 21, official identification through fingerprinting confirmed that it was indeed her. For the Petito family, this news was a devastating blow, although they had already feared the worst. Following an autopsy, Teton County Coroner Dr. Brent Blue made a statement on October 21, 2021. According to the autopsy results, Gabby Petito was a victim of homicide. The cause of death was determined to be manual strangulation. The autopsy also revealed that death occurred 4 weeks prior to the discovery of the body, coinciding with Gabby's last confirmed sighting on August 27. The coroner noted that the injuries found indicated a violent nature of death. However, due to the ongoing investigation, details were not disclosed. For Gabby's family, this confirmation served as the final testament to the tragic end of their daughter. The discovery of Gabby's body sparked immense public outcry. The hashtag Justice for Gabby gained traction, and social media users began demanding justice and answers. People worldwide expressed condolences to the Petito family and questioned what had transpired in the final days of Gabby's life. Brian Laundrie's behavior and that of his family once again came under scrutiny. Many began to accuse Laundrie of murder, despite the absence of official charges. Gabby's parents publicly accused Brian of being involved in their daughter's death and demanded that he explain his actions. Amid these events, Brian Laundrie became the primary suspect in the case. On September 23, the FBI issued a federal warrant for his arrest for fraud related to the use of Gabby's debit card after her death. However, Brian himself vanished, leaving behind even more questions. On September 17, 2021, 2 days after Gabby's body was found, Brian Laundrie's family reported his disappearance to the police. Brian's parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, claimed they last saw their son on September 14, when he allegedly went for a hike in the Carlton Reserve near their home in Northport, Florida. According to his parents, Brian took a backpack with him and stated that he wanted to spend time in nature. This information raised eyebrows among investigators and the public. Many suspected that the Laundrie family might have provided false information or assisted Brian in going into hiding. The Northport police later stated that they initially believed Brian was at home, but it later became clear that he was missing. On September 18, extensive searches for Brian began in the Carlton Reserve, which spans over 10,000 acres and includes dense forests, swamps, and lakes. The search was conducted under challenging conditions: high humidity, heat, and the presence of alligators and snakes complicated the task. Dozens of police officers, volunteers, drones, and trained dogs participated in the operation. Despite the extensive efforts, the first weeks of the search yielded no results. Many began to question whether Brian was truly in the area or if it was a diversion. Meanwhile, attention to the case remained unwavering. News of Laundrie's disappearance and his possible involvement in Gabby's death continued to dominate headlines. On October 20, 2021, during the search in the Carlton Reserve, FBI agents and police discovered human remains. Nearby were a backpack and notebook belonging to Brian Laundrie. The remains were found in an area that had previously been submerged, which likely explained why they had not been discovered earlier. On October 21, dental analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Brian Laundrie. The initial autopsy could not determine the cause of death due to the level of decomposition, but later, in November 2021, the coroner concluded that Brian had died by suicide from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The notebook found alongside the remains became a key piece of evidence. According to FBI statements, the notebook contained writings in which Brian acknowledged his responsibility for Gabby's death. However, the full text of the writings was not made public. This statement served as the final proof confirming that Brian was the perpetrator of the tragedy. The discovery of Brian's remains concluded the active phase of the search but left many questions regarding his motives and the circumstances surrounding the events. From the outset of Brian Laundrie's disappearance, his parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, faced sharp criticism from the public and Gabby Petito's family. Their refusal to cooperate with the police, reluctance to answer questions, and the sudden report of their son's disappearance days after he went missing raised suspicions. The Laundrie family claimed they were unaware of Brian's involvement in Gabby's disappearance until she was officially reported missing. However, public opinion leaned towards the belief that they may have helped him evade capture. The reputation of Brian's parents deteriorated when it was revealed that they did not inform the police of their son's disappearance until September 17, despite him leaving home 3 days earlier. The Petito family and their attorneys accused the Laundries of harboring Brian and failing to assist in the search for Gabby. However, no direct evidence was provided to support claims of the Laundrie parents' involvement in concealing their son's whereabouts. Under Florida law, parents are not obligated to testify against their children, which limited the police and prosecution options. Nevertheless, their behavior sparked a wave of public outrage. Protesters regularly gathered outside the Laundrie home in Northport, demanding justice for Gabby. People shouted accusations, left signs, and held a memorial on the sidewalk near their home. Throughout the investigation, Christopher and Roberta communicated with law enforcement only through their attorney. This further fueled public suspicion. However, when the search for Brian reached a standstill, it was the Laundrie parents who directed the police to the Carlton Reserve, where their son's remains were ultimately found. Critics noted the oddity of how key evidence was discovered on the very day Christopher Laundrie participated in the search. Some speculated that the family might have known in advance where their son was but chose not to disclose that information. The Laundries' behavior in the context of the case became a subject of widespread discussion. Some commentators and activists called for changes in legislation to prevent parents from invoking their right to remain silent in such situations. The story sparked debates about the moral and legal obligations of family members of a crime suspect. For the Petito family, the Laundries' behavior was a painful blow. They repeatedly expressed frustration and anger towards Brian's parents, believing that their actions hindered the search for Gabby and obstructed the pursuit of justice. In May 2022, the Petito family filed a civil lawsuit against the Laundries, accusing them of emotional distress and claiming they knew about Gabby's death but concealed information. The lawsuit garnered media attention, but a final court decision is yet to be reached. The actions of the Laundrie family remain one of the most contentious aspects of the case. Their refusal to engage with the Petito family and law enforcement became a symbol of indifference, exacerbating public perception of this tragedy. Immediately following the discovery of Gabby Petito's body on September 19, 2021, the FBI officially took charge of the investigation. The police in Utah, Wyoming, and Florida continued to collaborate with federal agents. The primary objective became reconstructing all events that transpired between Gabby's last confirmed sighting on August 27 and the moment of her death. The FBI also examined all digital traces of the couple, including their phone calls, messages, social media posts, and GPS data. This information helped narrow down the timeline and confirm the whereabouts of Gabby and Brian in the days leading up to the tragedy. The notebook found near Brian Laundrie's remains became an important piece of evidence. According to the FBI's official statement, Brian confessed to killing Gabby in it. Although the full contents of the notebook were not released, it also contained notes that shed light on Brian's state of mind in the final days of his life. Investigators noted that in the writings, he described Gabby's death as a tragic mistake. At the same time, the notebook was perceived as an attempt by Brian to justify his actions, leaving no doubt that he was responsible for her death. On January 21, 2022, the FBI officially announced the conclusion of the investigation. In their statement, they confirmed that Brian Laundrie was the sole individual responsible for Gabby Petito's death. Following his death, the case effectively lost its legal perspective, as the primary suspect could no longer stand trial. Gabby's parents stated that they were satisfied that the investigation confirmed Brian's involvement. However, they expressed disappointment over the inability to achieve full justice and obtain answers to many questions. The story of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie revealed numerous issues within the system. In particular, the incident in Utah on August 12, 2021, when police failed to take further measures to protect Gabby, raised serious questions about how law enforcement responds to potential domestic violence cases. Public organizations began campaigns aimed at training police officers to recognize hidden signs of violence. Changes to laws were also proposed to require family members of suspects to assist in investigations related to missing persons. For Gabby's family, the conclusion of the investigation was not only a relief but also a symbolic step towards healing. The girl's parents began actively engaging in charitable work aimed at preventing domestic violence. They established the Gabby Petito Foundation to assist other victims and their families. Gabby's story ended tragically, but her legacy continues to inspire change. The questions raised during the investigation have fostered public discussions about domestic violence, mental health, and the need for enhanced cooperation between citizens and law enforcement. From the very beginning of the Gabby Petito case, social media became a powerful tool for both disseminating information and conducting unofficial investigations. Users of platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter actively analyzed available data, including surveillance footage, the couple's social media posts, and eyewitness accounts. One of the pivotal moments that facilitated the progress of the investigation occurred due to the Bet family vloggers, who inadvertently captured footage of Gabby and Brian's van in their recording made in the Spread Creek area on August 27. Their video, published on YouTube, assisted the police in pinpointing the location where Gabby's remains were subsequently discovered. This case illustrated the significant role that social media can play in contemporary investigations, while also raising questions about the boundaries of privacy. The public's attention was so intense that both Gabby and Brian's families faced threats and invasions of their personal lives. The Gabby Petito case sparked fervent discussions surrounding domestic violence, mental health, and police conduct. Many criticized the Moab police for failing to accurately assess the situation on August 12, 2021, when Gabby was clearly distressed and signs of violence were overlooked. This led to calls for a re-evaluation of protocols regarding interactions with victims of violence and training for law enforcement personnel. Activists also highlighted the disproportionate attention given to Gabby's case compared to other missing persons cases, particularly those involving Indigenous individuals and minorities. This phenomenon, known as the missing white woman syndrome, became a topic of discussion in the media and on social networks. Numerous voices called for equal attention to be given to every missing person case, regardless of ethnicity or social status. The impact of the Gabby Petito case extended into the legislative arena. Discussions began in several states, including New York and Florida, regarding the enhancement of measures to prevent domestic violence. Initiatives were proposed to train police officers and social workers to identify hidden signs of abuse, as well as to improve coordination among agencies. Furthermore, the families of violence victims became more proactive in advocating for changes aimed at enhancing the search for missing persons, including the use of modern technology and community involvement. The Gabby Petito Foundation, established by her family, has become a significant part of her legacy. This foundation provides assistance to victims of domestic violence and funds projects aimed at preventing similar tragedies. Gabby's parents actively participate in public events, sharing her story and calling for action. Gabby's memory is also preserved in the hearts of her friends, followers, and those who have followed her case. Her story has inspired thousands of people worldwide to combat domestic violence and strive for justice. The Gabby Petito case underscored the importance of recognizing signs of violence in a timely manner, providing support to loved ones, and reporting suspicious situations. It also served as a reminder that social media can be not only a means of self-expression but also a powerful tool that can help save lives. Despite the tragic outcome, her story has left a profound impact on society, altering perspectives on many critical issues and motivating thousands to fight against violence. On the evening of July 18, 2018, Molly Tibbetts donned her sneakers, activated her fitness tracker, and set out for a run through the quiet streets of her hometown, Brooklyn, Iowa. For the 20-year-old, this was a familiar routine, a moment to clear her mind and relish the summer sunset. Little did anyone know that this day would mark the last time she was seen alive. When Molly failed to return home, a wave of anxiety swept through the town, soon giving way to fear. The search for the young woman commenced immediately, involving police, volunteers, friends, and family. However, with each passing day, hope of finding her alive began to wane. Beneath the silence, broken only by the whisper of cornfields, lay a harrowing truth. The disappearance of Molly Tibbetts transformed into more than just a tragedy. It ignited a complex investigation that would soon shake the entire nation and leave an indelible mark on the hearts of millions. Molly Cecilia Tibbetts, born on May 8, 1998, grew up in the small village of Brooklyn, Iowa, where everyone knew one another. She was the eldest daughter of Robert Tibbetts and Laura Calderon. Molly's parents divorced when she was a child, yet they maintained a warm relationship despite the changes in family dynamics. She was raised in an environment filled with love and care, sharing her home with two brothers, older Jake and younger Scott. Family and friends described her as an intelligent, cheerful, and kind young woman, always ready to lend a helping hand. Molly developed a pronounced love for academics and sports. Her school years were spent at Brooklyn Guernsey Malcolm High School, where she actively participated in various school events, including cross-country. In 2017, after graduating, she enrolled at the University of Iowa to study psychology, a choice that reflected her desire to help others. On campus, Molly quickly made new friends and maintained warm relationships with her classmates, as well as with her boyfriend, Dalton Jack. The summer of 2018 became a time of both relaxation and hard work for her. She returned to Brooklyn to work at a summer camp and spend time with family. Her days were filled. During the day, she engaged with children, and in the evenings, she went for runs that were part of her daily routine. This calm and familiar schedule in a small town where crime was rare seemed utterly safe. No one could have anticipated that one of those runs would mark the beginning of tragic events. July 18, 2018, began like any other day. Molly spent her morning working at the children's camp, later returning home to rest. In the evening, she donned athletic attire, took her fitness tracker, and set out for a run. None of her loved ones suspected that this would be the last time they would see her alive. When Molly did not return home, her family and friends felt an immediate sense of unease. She was someone with a clear schedule and habits, making her disappearance all the more alarming. The first hours after her disappearance were tense. Parents, friends, and loved ones scoured the surroundings, hoping to find any clue. By morning, it became evident that the situation was serious, and her parents reported her missing to the police. Local law enforcement quickly initiated an investigation. The police established a command center in Brooklyn, coordinating search operations from there. The search quickly escalated. Hundreds of volunteers joined professional rescuers, combining fields, forests, and roads within several miles of Molly's last known location. People worked day and night, flashlights in hand, hoping to uncover any trace. In the initial days, there were few key leads. The police focused on witnesses who might have seen Molly on the day of her disappearance. Her last departure from home was captured on neighbors' cameras, but these recordings did not provide immediate concrete clues. Molly was seen in athletic wear, calmly walking down the road, heading out for her run. This merely confirmed that she had indeed left home around 7:30 p.m. A breakthrough in the case came thanks to the Fitbit fitness tracker that Molly wore on her wrist. This device recorded her route and activity, which could assist in pinpointing her exact location and time of disappearance. The police requested access to this data, collaborating with the device's manufacturer and cellular providers to trace her phone's whereabouts. However, the technical process took several days, causing growing anxiety among all involved in the search. Meanwhile, volunteers continued to work tirelessly. Everyone who could potentially be connected to the disappearance came under scrutiny. Molly's close friends and family were interviewed multiple times. Special attention was given to her boyfriend, Dalton Jack. He provided an alibi, stating that he was in another city working on a construction site, and actively participated in the search to social media, posting updates to draw attention to the case. The press also took notice. News of Molly Tibbetts' disappearance quickly spread through local and national media. Photographs of the smiling girl with long dark hair appeared everywhere on television screens, in newspapers, and across social media. The hashtag Finding Molly went viral, uniting thousands of people across the country who followed the progress of the search. Parallel to the search efforts, the police scrutinized footage from surveillance cameras. One recording captured a black Chevrolet Malibu that appeared to be following Molly along the road. This vehicle became the first significant clue in the case, but at that time, its owner could not be identified. With each passing day, hope of finding Molly alive dwindled. However, her family remained steadfast in their faith. Her father, Robert Tibbetts, publicly urged people to continue the search and pray for his daughter's safe return. He also offered a reward for any information that could assist in the investigation. Yet, as time progressed, concrete answers remained elusive. For several weeks, Brooklyn, typically a quiet and peaceful town, transformed into the epicenter of search operations and discussions. The event shocked the local residents, who found it hard to believe that something so tragic could occur in their small community. Tension mounted, and the case of Molly Tibbetts grew increasingly mysterious. In August, nearly a month after Molly's disappearance, the investigation made a significant breakthrough that would shape the course of events. Detectives managed to link the evidence found to a specific individual, reigniting hope that the truth would soon be revealed. By early August 2018, the investigation into Molly Tibbetts' disappearance was gaining momentum. After several weeks of fruitless searches, the police focused on analyzing electronic data, surveillance footage, and interviewing witnesses. Despite the lack of obvious leads, every piece of evidence was meticulously examined to reconstruct the final hours of Molly's life. A breakthrough occurred when the police accessed footage from surveillance cameras installed on one of Brooklyn's streets. The footage showed Molly running along her evening jogging route. The cameras also captured a black Chevrolet Malibu moving in the same direction, seemingly following her. This was the first substantial evidence that allowed the narrowing of the suspect pool. Through image analysis, the police determined that the vehicle was equipped with unique rims, which could aid in identifying its owner. Simultaneously, the police examined data from the Fitbit fitness tracker that Molly wore. The device recorded her physical activity on the day of her disappearance, including a sharp decline in activity around 8:00 p.m., which presumably coincided with the time of the attack. This data, combined with information about the location of her phone, helped pinpoint the area where the crime might have occurred. Detectives concentrated their search on a specific rural area near Molly's jogging route. This information became the foundation for the police's subsequent actions. The owner of the Chevrolet Malibu was identified a few days after analyzing the footage. The vehicle belonged to a 24-year-old man named Christian Bahena Rivera, who lived and worked on a dairy farm near Brooklyn. Christian was an immigrant from Mexico, having resided in the United States for several years. He performed strenuous physical labor on the farm and was described by colleagues as a quiet and unassuming individual. Suspicion quickly fell on Rivera, as his vehicle matched the one seen in the footage. Additionally, his home was located close to Molly's jogging route. The police conducted surveillance on him before inviting him for questioning. On August 20, 2018, Christian Bahena Rivera was arrested and taken to the police station for interrogation. Initially, he denied any involvement in Molly's disappearance. However, during a lengthy interrogation, he began to provide contradictory statements. When shown footage of his vehicle, Rivera admitted to being near the location of Molly's disappearance that evening. Under the weight of the evidence, he confessed. Rivera recounted that he had noticed Molly during her run and began to follow her. At one point, he exited his vehicle and attempted to speak with her, but she threatened to call the police. This, he claimed, led him to lose control. His account then became fragmented. He stated that he could not recall the details, except that he later found himself in his car with Molly's body in the trunk. Rivera also indicated the location where he left the body, a cornfield on the property of the farm where he worked. These words became pivotal for the conclusion of the search efforts. The day after Rivera's confession, the police proceeded to the site he had indicated. In the dense cornfield, detectives discovered the remains of a young woman, wrapped in a red shirt that matched the clothing described by Molly's family. An autopsy later confirmed that the body belonged to Molly Tibbetts. The cause of death was multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen. The discovery of the body sent shockwaves through the entire community. Hopes of finding Molly alive were irrevocably shattered. The case now transitioned into the phase of preparing for trial, where justice for the young woman's life would be sought. The news of Rivera's confession and the discovery of Molly's body elicited a tumultuous reaction. The Tibbetts family expressed profound gratitude to all who participated in the search, yet their grief was immeasurable. Molly's father, Robert, appealed to the public to remember her as a joyful and loving person, not as a victim of a crime. Meanwhile, politicians began using the case to discuss immigration issues because Rivera was in the country illegally. This caused controversy and division of opinion, which became the backdrop for the upcoming trial. The end of the investigation was the beginning of a new phase, the trial of Christian Bahena Rivera, who had to answer for his actions before the law. After Christian Bahena Rivera's arrest, preparations began for the trial, which became one of the most talked about cases of 2018. The case not only caught the attention of the general public, but also sparked a serious political and social debate. The community demanded justice for Molly, and every action by the prosecution and defense was closely monitored. The Poweshiek County Prosecutor's Office charged Rivera with first-degree murder. If convicted, he faced life in prison without parole. At his first court hearing, Rivera refused to plead guilty. His defense, represented by appointed attorneys, began preparing a defense, arguing that their client had been pressured during interrogation and his confession may have been obtained illegally. The preliminary hearing was held under increased media attention. Prosecutors presented evidence that Rivera's car was spotted at the location where Molly was and his DNA matched the samples found on her body. This evidence was a strong prosecution case, but the defense challenged the legality of obtaining it. The main line of defense centered around the suggestion that Rivera's confession was hammered out under duress and could not be used in court. The defense lawyers argued that Rivera was subjected to a lengthy interrogation during which his rights could have been violated. They insisted that the confession be excluded from evidence. In addition, the defense focused on the fact that Rivera, as an illegal immigrant, did not speak English well, and this could have caused misunderstandings during the interrogation. The court had to decide how convincing these arguments were. The trial began in May 2021, almost 3 years after Molly's disappearance. During the hearing, the prosecution presented an extensive set of evidence, a recording that showed Rivera's car traveling along Molly's jogging route. The coincidence of Molly's and Rivera's locations at the time of her disappearance. Rivera's co-workers reported that he was missing for several hours on the day of Molly's disappearance. Despite defense attempts to exclude this evidence, the court found it admissible. Rivera's genetic samples were found on Molly's body. This evidence created a coherent picture linking Rivera to Molly's murder. In response, the defense attempted to create doubt about Rivera's guilt. The main argument was that their client was coerced by the police and that his confession was coerced. They also put forward an alternative theory, arguing that Molly could have been victimized by another person or group of people. The defense line culminated with Rivera's statement that he did not act alone. During his testimony, he stated that he was forced to drive Molly to the cornfield by 2 strange men who threatened him and his family. This testimony, however, was not accompanied by evidence, which weakened the defense's case. After 2 weeks of trial and consideration of all the evidence, the jury proceeded to reach a verdict. On May 28, 2021, after 7 hours of deliberations, Rivera was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For Molly's family, the verdict was a welcome end to an agonizing trial. Her father Robert said in court, "We are grateful to everyone who helped get justice for Molly. But nothing will bring our daughter back." The trial and sentencing sparked widespread public outcry. Some praised the justice system for its swift and thorough work, while others expressed concern that the case had been politicized because of Rivera's status as an illegal immigrant. Nevertheless, most agreed that the perpetrator received the punishment he deserved. By the end of the trial, the focus shifted to a broader context of how Molly's tragedy could be a lesson for improving security, protecting women, and preventing similar crimes in the future. The trial of Christian Bahena Rivera was the final point in the investigation, but the case of Molly Tibbetts sparked a strong reaction in American society, touching on many deep social and political issues. The murder of a young girl in a small town was not only a personal tragedy for the family, but also the subject of fierce debates about safety, immigration policy, and the role of women in society. Residents of Brooklyn, Iowa, and thousands of strangers across the country mourned Molly's death. After her body was discovered, the city organized memorials to remember her. Residents decorated the streets with ribbons and flowers, and moments of silence were held at schools and public buildings. A local church became a place where Molly's friends and family shared memories of her and expressed support for each other. It was important for the Tibbetts family to keep Molly's memory alive, not only as a victim of crime, but also as a bright, kind and ambitious young woman. Molly's parents made repeated appeals to the community, "Let our daughter be remembered not for the way she left, but for the way she lived." However, Molly's case quickly became a tool for political statements. After learning that Christian Bahena Rivera was an undocumented immigrant, some politicians, including then-President Donald Trump, used the case to support tough immigration policies. At rallies and on social media, Trump talked about the case as an example of the need for stronger border enforcement and a crackdown on illegal immigration. The rhetoric exacerbated polarization in the community. Conservative groups maintained a focus on immigration issues, demanding stronger measures to deport undocumented migrants. Liberal organizations, on the other hand, pointed to an attempt to use the tragedy for political purposes and emphasized that violence and crime are committed by people regardless of their immigration status. Molly's family tried to distance themselves from the political speculation surrounding her death. The girl's father, Robert Tibbets, stated in an open letter published in newspapers, "My daughter is not a symbol of your hatred. To use her death to justify xenophobia is disrespectful to her memory." He emphasized that Molly believed in goodness and justice and would not support divisive rhetoric. These words helped balance the discussion of the case, but public tensions continued to rise. The tragedy brought attention to broader issues about women's safety, the role of technology in investigations, and the challenges of small towns where law enforcement capabilities are limited. Molly's death became a catalyst for societal change. Educational and social programs were initiated to improve safety in small towns. Charity runs and marathons were organized in her memory, raising funds to support the families of victims of violence. Nationally, her case has become one example of how data from gadgets such as fitness trackers and smartphones can play a key role in solving crimes. This has sparked discussions about the need to standardize the use of such technology in investigations. The tragedy of Molly Tibbets reminded Americans of the fragility of safety, even in the calmest of places. Her name became associated in the public consciousness with the need to protect women from violence, to place more emphasis on technology and security, and to find a balance between justice and politics. It seemed that Molly's family, despite the unspeakable grief, managed to turn this tragedy into a lesson for everyone who followed the case. They insisted that her life was a symbol of kindness and inspiration, not political division. Molly Tibbets' death left a deep mark on her family, friends, and the entire country. But despite the tragic loss, her loved ones have chosen to memorialize her by creating initiatives that embody her life values and help others. This chapter shares how Molly's life continued to inspire people even after her passing. After the trial ended, a memorial was organized in Brooklyn in memory of Molly. A bench with her name on it was set up downtown where people could leave flowers and notes. A memorial run is held annually on the anniversary of her disappearance and has become a symbol of community unity and strength. Participants gather not only in Iowa, but also in other states to run for Molly, remembering her love of sports. Schools where Molly attended have established scholarships in her honor. These scholarships are awarded to students who share her passion for learning and wish to dedicate their lives to helping others. Molly's family emphasized that the scholarships are a way to support young people who want to make the world a better place. The Tibbets family has launched campaigns to combat violence against women and raise awareness about safety. One such initiative was Molly's Movement, an organization that spreads awareness about the need to protect women in public spaces and creates funds to support families who have experienced tragedies. The use of technology to prevent violence was emphasized. Molly's story emphasized how important data from electronic devices is in solving crimes, and the family encouraged device manufacturers to work with law enforcement to create tools that could save lives. To friends and family, Molly remained an example of someone who lived life to the fullest and strived to make positive changes. Her younger brother, Scott, shared in an interview how his sister's death changed his life. He decided to follow in her footsteps by going to university to study psychology and help people like Molly wanted to do. Dalton Jack, her young man, also shared memories of her. He described Molly as a bright light who inspired everyone around her. He also expressed gratitude for the support he and the family received from thousands of strangers across the country. Molly's story has continued to live on in the national dialogue about safety, technology, and women's rights. Her case has become part of educational programs aimed at preventing violence. Universities and schools have held lectures and workshops that use Molly's story as an example of the need to be safety conscious and use modern tools for protection. At the legislative level, her name has also been heard. The immigration policy discussion sparked by the Rivera case has left a mark on the debate, but Molly's family insisted that her memory should not become a tool in the political battle. Instead, they called for support for programs to protect women regardless of their background. Molly Tibbets has become a symbol of kindness and strength. Her family and friends were able to turn the pain of loss into a movement that continues to inspire people to help each other and strive to do better. Through memorials, scholarships, and community initiatives, Molly's life continues to make an impact, reminding us of the importance of human reciprocity and respect. Molly's case has left a deep impact not only on those who knew her personally, but across the country. Her name is now associated with the hope, memory, and fight for justice that have become part of her legacy. Molly Tibbitt's story continues to resonate with people, prompting the community to reflect on issues of safety, justice, and compassion. This tragedy has not only symbolized unity and the fight for women's rights, but has also led to practical changes that can prevent similar incidents in the future. Molly's case emphasized the importance of using technology, such as fitness trackers and mobile devices, to find missing people. Police and private companies have begun to work more closely together to speed up the process of providing data that can be crucial in investigations. After the Molly case, fitness gadget and cell phone manufacturers began offering new safety features, including the ability to quickly notify emergency services or contacts in case of emergencies. These measures were a response to public demand for increased safety, especially for women who exercise outdoors. The Tibbetts family also encouraged the public to use technology responsibly by learning data protection techniques and increasing digital literacy. Molly's case was a catalyst for the creation of programs to prevent violence against women. Courses and training on personal safety emerged in schools, universities, and community organizations. Training included strategies for avoiding dangerous situations, using technology to track location, and tools to help deal with threats. Some organizations have begun developing mobile security apps that allow users to share their location with trusted contacts or quickly summon help. Amid the public outcry following Molly's murder, a debate began about the need for new legislative measures. While the politicization of the case has sparked controversy, it has become the basis for proposals aimed at protecting women. These include tougher penalties for violent crimes, the creation of national databases of missing persons, and increased funding for victim support programs. At the same time, discussions about immigration policy have raised questions about the responsibility of employers to check the status of employees. While Molly's family emphasized that their daughter should not become a weapon in the political debate, the case served as the basis for changes in hiring procedures in some states. Molly's family has continued to work to memorialize her. A foundation in her honor helps students in need and victims of violence. Funds raised through charity runs and donations are used to support educational initiatives and safety programs. The foundation also works with local and national organizations to promote messages that reflect Molly's personal values of helping others, seeking justice, and caring for the weak. For Molly's friends and family, her life remains an example of strength, kindness, and courage. Each of them found different ways to keep her legacy alive. For example, her brother Scott became an active supporter of university safety programs, and Molly's friends organized charity marathons and social projects to help young people. In an interview, her father Robert Tibbetts said Molly has always believed that one person can change the world. She changed our world, and we will continue her work to make a difference in the world. The story of Molly Tibbetts is more than a chronicle of one tragic crime. It is a reminder of the importance of community, mutual aid, and the pursuit of justice. Every memorial, charity event, or educational program created in her memory is a reflection of her spirit. For the people of Brooklyn and millions of people across the country, Molly has become a symbol that inspires to fight for safety, support your neighbors, and never lose hope. Her name is now associated with a movement for positive change that continues to impact the community. Years after Molly Tibbett's murder, her story remains one of the most resonant tragedies in modern America. Her death changed the lives of many people and brought attention to issues that had often been ignored before. It showed that even in the face of tragedy, it is possible to find the strength to unite and create a better future. On a warm August evening in 2018, in a quiet suburb of Philadelphia, the life of Christina Carlin Craft was abruptly cut short under mysterious and brutal circumstances. A young and successful model who graced the pages of glossy magazines found herself at the center of one of the most shocking crimes that rocked the local community. What led her to a fateful encounter with the individual who took her life? This question is the key to a story filled with enigmas, despair, and the quest for justice. Christina Carlin Craft was born in South Jersey, USA. From a young age, she exhibited a keen interest in the modeling industry and the entertainment sphere. With her green eyes, chestnut hair, and olive-toned skin, Christina had Russian, German, and Swedish roots. This unique appearance drew attention, and soon she began to take her first steps in her modeling career. In the early 2010s, Christina actively collaborated with various modeling agencies, striving to establish herself in the industry. Her determination and natural charisma allowed her to participate in photo shoots for renowned brands and magazines. However, the path to success was not easy, and Christina faced numerous challenges typical of the competitive world of fashion. Despite the difficulties, Christina continued to work diligently, honing her skills and expanding her portfolio. Her professionalism and dedication gradually bore fruit, opening new opportunities in the modeling realm. Thus, the early years and the beginning of Christina Carlin Craft's career were characterized by a pursuit of self-realization in the modeling industry, overcoming obstacles, and a gradual ascent to success. Christina Carlin Craft gradually established herself in the modeling industry, earning a reputation as a hardworking and charismatic model. Her career began to flourish after participating in several major projects that became turning points. One of her significant achievements was collaborating with well-known magazines such as Vanity Fair, Maxim, and Playboy. For each publication, Christina showcased her versatility, effortlessly embodying various personas. With her striking appearance and natural charm, she became popular among professional photographers. Working in the modeling industry opened doors for Christina into the world of glamour. She faced an intense schedule, shooting on different continents and attending numerous public events. It was a challenging path where competition reached its peak, but Christina proved capable of withstanding the pressure. Christina placed particular emphasis on professionalism and maintaining connections. She understood the importance of finding common ground with clients and agents. This helped her secure consistent offers, expand her network, and confidently move forward. One of the traits that distinguished Christina from other models was her commitment to self-improvement. She constantly worked on herself, refining her poses, posture, and emotional expressiveness. Many colleagues and acquaintances noted her willingness to experiment and her eagerness to learn new things. However, Christina's ambition for success extended beyond mere photo shoots. She also had a keen interest in design and art. She enjoyed exploring how unique looks were created for the runway and magazines, as well as participating in the process of crafting photo sessions. The peak of Christina's career coincided with a surge in attention to social media. She utilized Instagram as a platform to showcase her work, regularly posting snapshots from shoots and sharing her thoughts on fashion and beauty. This allowed her to attract a broad audience and solidify her presence in the industry. Despite the external glamour and success, the life of a model was filled not only with triumphs but also challenges. Christina constantly juggled a demanding schedule, personal life, and the need to find time for rest. Her perseverance and determination helped her overcome difficulties, but it often required immense effort. Christina Carlin Craft became not just a model but a symbol of ambition and professionalism, inspiring many young women aspiring to achieve success in the fashion world. This phase of her life represented a time of realizing long-held dreams and a significant step toward recognition. Beyond the bright lights of photo shoots and runway shows, Christina Carlin Craft led a rich personal life that remained a mystery to many. Despite the public nature of her profession, she endeavored to keep her personal relationships away from the cameras, leaving space for privacy. Christina grew up in a family that always supported her aspirations for success. Her parents played a crucial role in her life, often serving as a source of moral support and inspiration. Their advice and example helped her maintain resilience in the face of challenges that arose along her path. In her interactions with friends, Christina revealed herself to be a kind and attentive person. She valued close relationships, made an effort to assist those dear to her, and always found time to meet with loved ones. This contrasted with the model image that many associated with coldness and selfishness. Christina, on the contrary, was renowned for her warmth and friendliness. Christina's personal life was not without its complexities. Like many public figures, she was surrounded by admirers and acquaintances who were not always sincere. Some found it difficult to accept her success, which at times led to envy and tension. However, Christina strived to maintain a positive outlook, focusing on those who genuinely cared for her. During the peak of her professional career, Christina engaged in romantic relationships that, according to those close to her, held significant meaning. However, maintaining a balance between her career and personal life proved to be a formidable challenge. A demanding shooting schedule, travel, and client meetings often hindered her ability to cultivate stable relationships. A key aspect of her life was her pursuit of harmony. Christina frequently sought ways to alleviate stress through sports and meditation. She had a passion for travel, drawing inspiration from diverse cultures and new locales. This quest for inner balance enabled her to maintain clarity of mind and stay focused on her goals. Among Christina's friends were not only colleagues from the modeling industry but also individuals from the realms of art, music, and design. These connections opened new horizons for her and allowed for the exchange of ideas with like-minded individuals. She believed that genuine relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding, regardless of social status or professional differences. Christina Carlin Craft's personal life was filled with a desire for happiness and harmony. Surrounded by many people, she had the ability to find those who were truly close to her. This capacity to value authentic relationships made her not only a successful model but also an inspiring individual. The summer of 2018 marked a turning point in Christina Carlin Craft's life. Despite her flourishing career and a life seemingly filled with vibrant events, numerous occurrences during this period foreshadowed tragedy. Christina rented an apartment in a condominium in Ardmore, a suburb of Philadelphia. This area was renowned for its safety and respectability, making it appealing to successful professionals. The apartment served as not only a place of rest for Christina but also a sanctuary where she could be alone and recharge. In the week leading up to the tragic events, Christina was active. Neighbors reported that she appeared cheerful, greeting those around her and showing no signs of distress. However, on August 18, an incident disrupted her tranquility. She reported to the police the theft of personal belongings from her apartment, including a designer handbag and jewelry valued at several $1,000s. This event unsettled Christina, yet she hoped the police would swiftly apprehend the culprits. Subsequently, she changed the locks on her apartment in an effort to secure herself. Nevertheless, a sense of unease lingered. In the days that followed, she confided in friends about her concerns, mentioning strange phone calls and a feeling of being watched. On August 23, Christina met Jonathan Harris, a man who would later be implicated in her demise. They encountered each other in a bar in Philadelphia. Surveillance footage captured the couple spending several hours together before heading to Christina's apartment. These recordings later became a crucial element in the investigation. Neighbors claimed to have heard noise coming from Christina's apartment on the night of August 22, 23, but no one paid it much attention. The noise was not overly loud, and the cries did not sound like pleas for help. However, it was during these hours that events unfolded that would forever alter the lives of Christina's family and loved ones. In the early morning of August 24, 2018, police officers arrived at the condominium in Ardmore following a call from a concerned relative of Christina Carlin Craft. The relative had been unable to reach her, which was highly unusual for Christina, who was always in touch. Upon entering her apartment, the police discovered the body of a woman. Christina lay on the bed, strangled with a cord. There were no signs of forced entry or robbery, raising numerous questions immediately. Forensic experts began examining the crime scene. Signs of a struggle caught their attention: overturned furniture, torn bed linens, and damaged decorative items in the bedroom. These details indicated that Christina had fought back against her assailant until the very end. Despite the absence of visible signs of forced entry, experts speculated that the killer may have been familiar with Christina and allowed into the apartment willingly. The police scrutinized surveillance footage from the building and the street. The recordings showed Christina returning home accompanied by a man on the evening of August 23rd. The cameras captured them entering the building together, after which Christina led her guest to her apartment. The preliminary forensic examination determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation with a cord. No signs of sexual violence were found, however, there was evidence of a physical struggle, indicating a deliberate and brutal nature of the crime. Experts also collected DNA samples from the crime scene, hoping they would aid in identifying the suspect. One of the initial theories proposed by the police was an attempted robbery. Despite the absence of clear signs of theft, a previous history of items disappearing from the apartment prompted investigators to consider this hypothesis. Nevertheless, the lack of forced entry and the presence of valuable items left behind weakened this theory. Simultaneously, investigators began interviewing neighbors and acquaintances of Christina. Many claimed she had not mentioned any conflicts or threats against her, although she had appeared noticeably tense in the days leading up to the incident. Several neighbors reported hearing strange noises on the night of the murder, but these accounts did not provide a clear understanding of the timeline of events. A pivotal moment in the investigation was the analysis of surveillance camera footage. The identity of the man who entered the apartment with Christina was established through his tattoos and clothing. He was identified as Jonathan Harris, previously convicted of theft and robbery. This revelation marked a significant breakthrough in the case, providing investigators with a direction for further inquiry. The discovery of Christina Carlin Craft's body and the subsequent developments shocked not only her loved ones but also the public. The model circle was taken aback that such a tragedy could occur in a relatively safe neighborhood, regarded as one of the best places to live. The police prioritized Christina's murder, promising to find the perpetrator as swiftly as possible and to uncover all circumstances surrounding the incident. Ahead of them lay a complex and multifaceted process of seeking the truth. Following the discovery of Christina Carlin Craft's body, the Montgomery County Police launched an extensive investigation. Detectives understood that time was against them, and every missed detail could hinder the capture of the murderer. An operational headquarters was immediately established to coordinate the efforts of the investigative team. The first step involved processing the crime scene. Forensic experts documented all possible evidence, including fingerprints, fabric fibers, and biological materials. Particular attention was drawn to the DNA samples found on the cord used to strangle Christina. These samples became crucial in identifying the suspect. Investigators also meticulously examined the apartment. Given that the locks on the door had been recently replaced, the investigation ruled out the possibility of a break-in. This supported the hypothesis that Christina had willingly let the murderer in. Surveillance footage emerged as one of the primary sources of information. Detectives reviewed dozens of hours of video to establish the exact time Christina returned home and to identify the man accompanying her. The footage clearly captured the suspect's face and tattoos. Later, this information was used to create wanted posters. Additionally, recordings from nearby cameras were analyzed to determine the suspect's movements before and after the crime. This enabled the police to track his whereabouts and identify potential hiding places. Interviews with neighbors confirmed that on the evening of August 23rd, Christina returned home accompanied by a man. Some residents heard noises and screams but did not consider them alarming enough to call the police. These testimonies helped reconstruct the overall picture of events. Friends and family of Christina were also questioned. None of them recognized the man with whom she spent her final hours. This indicated that their acquaintance had occurred shortly before the tragedy. A key moment came with the use of the DNA database. The materials collected from the crime scene matched the profile of Jonathan Harris, who had a prior record of several offenses, including robbery and violence. His name was already in police archives, allowing for the swift identification of the suspect. Detectives also discovered that Harris had been released from prison just weeks before Christina's murder. This added another layer to the suspect's profile. He was a person with a criminal past, prone to violent behavior. After identifying Jonathan Harris, the police initiated a large-scale manhunt. His photograph and description were disseminated to police stations across the state and published in the media. Officers checked potential hideouts, interviewed acquaintances, and tracked his movements. A few days later, on August 28, 2018, Harris was apprehended in Allentown County. He attempted to evade capture but was recognized due to the wanted poster circulated by the police. Upon his arrest, a phone was seized, containing crucial evidence, including messages confirming his connection with Christina on the day of her murder. Jonathan Harris did not immediately confess to his guilt. In the initial interrogations, he claimed that he and Christina had met by chance and that the murder occurred accidentally during an argument. However, the evidence collected by the police indicated a premeditated nature of the crime. Interrogations and the collection of evidence became the foundation for formulating the charges. The police completed the initial phase of the investigation, but a complex process of proving the suspect's guilt in court lay ahead. Following the arrest of Jonathan Harris on August 28, 2018, the Allentown police transferred him to the investigative team from Montgomery County. Harris, previously convicted of a series of violent crimes, emerged as a key figure in the murder case of Christina Carlin Craft. His arrest marked a significant breakthrough in the investigation, yet the detectives faced the challenge of establishing his involvement. Upon his arrest, Harris exhibited signs of nervousness but attempted to maintain his composure. He denied his guilt, claiming that a conflict had occurred between him and Christina, which allegedly ended in a tragic accident. However, the police already possessed evidence that cast doubt on this narrative. Items found in Harris' possession, including a phone with messages and surveillance footage, played a crucial role. These pieces of evidence linked him to the crime scene and the final hours of Christina's life. During the first interrogation, Harris admitted to meeting Christina at a bar in Philadelphia on the evening of August 23. He asserted that she invited him to her home to continue the evening. According to Harris, a quarrel ensued, fueled by alcohol-induced disagreements. He described the situation as a sudden outburst, which supposedly led to the tragedy. However, investigators noted numerous inconsistencies in his statements. Harris could not explain why signs of a struggle were found at the crime scene, and the act of strangulation with a cord clearly indicated intentionality. Moreover, his account of the time spent in the apartment did not align with the surveillance footage. The investigation relied on the gathered evidence. DNA analysis found on the cord and in other areas of the apartment matched Harris' samples with absolute certainty. This effectively undermined his attempts to deny involvement. Additionally, messages found on his phone suggested aggressive intentions. The police presented Harris with photographs from surveillance cameras. The images showed him exiting Christina's home on the morning of August 24, while the model's body lay in the bedroom. These recordings ultimately dismantled his defense. Under the weight of the evidence, Harris altered his testimony. During one interrogation, he confessed to strangling Christina but continued to insist that it was done in a fit of rage. Nevertheless, the investigation classified Harris' actions as premeditated murder, considering the circumstances and nature of the attack. Shortly after his confession, the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office charged Jonathan Harris with first-degree murder. He was also charged with aggravated assault and unlawful entry. Harris' arrest marked a significant step toward achieving justice, yet his contradictory statements rendered the upcoming trial a challenging endeavor. The public closely followed the developments, while Christina's family hoped for justice. The trial of Jonathan Harris commenced in late 2018 and became a pivotal moment in the case of Christina Carlin Craft. The proceedings garnered immense public and media interest, as the case not only shocked with its brutality but also raised numerous questions about safety and justice. The prosecution, presented by the Montgomery County attorneys, was based on irrefutable evidence. This included surveillance footage, witness testimonies, DNA analysis, and forensic examination results. The prosecutors aimed to demonstrate that Christina's murder was premeditated and cold-blooded. In contrast, the defense built its strategy on the assertion that Christina's death was a tragic accident. Harris' attorneys argued that a quarrel between him and Christina inadvertently led to her demise. They emphasized the absence of signs of sexual violence and the potential intoxication of both parties. During the initial hearings, the prosecution presented key evidence. The attorneys highlighted video recordings showing Harris in close proximity to Christina during her final hours. These images, along with DNA traces at the crime scene, unequivocally linked Harris to the murder. The court also heard the results of the medical examination. Experts confirmed that the strangulation with a cord was executed with significant force, ruling out the possibility of an accident. The prosecutors contended that Harris' actions were intentional, as he could have ceased his actions but chose to continue strangling the victim. Throughout the trial, several witnesses testified. Christina's neighbors recounted the noise emanating from her apartment on the night of the murder. Although many did not witness the events themselves, their testimonies helped corroborate that a struggle occurred within the apartment. Christina's friends also provided testimonies, describing her as a person who avoided conflict and violence. They mentioned her concerns for her safety following a prior theft incident, which heightened the drama of the situation. The defense of Harris sought to portray him as an individual caught in an emotionally charged situation. The attorneys contended that Harris lacked a premeditated motive, asserting that the events unfolded due to an escalation of conflict. Harris personally took the stand, declaring that he had no intention of harming Christine. However, his testimony was met with skepticism by the prosecution, as it contradicted the factual evidence. Prosecutors emphasized that his actions following the murder, concealing evidence and attempting to flee, indicated his awareness of guilt. The trial spanned several weeks, with the final statements from both sides underscoring opposing narratives of the incident. The prosecution insisted on the premeditated nature of the crime, while the defense endeavored to mitigate Harris' culpability by appealing to his emotional state. The public closely monitored the proceedings, expressing support for Christina's family. They hoped that justice would prevail and that the perpetrator would face appropriate consequences. In November 2018, after several weeks of deliberation, the court began to render its verdict. The tension in the courtroom reached a peak. Both sides understood that the final decision would culminate all efforts expended throughout the trial. For Christina's family, it was a moment of hope for justice. For Jonathan Harris, it was a last chance to evade the maximum penalty. The jury, composed of 12 members, deliberated for over 2 days. In their hands rested Harris' fate and the hopes of Christina's loved ones for justice. They examined a multitude of evidence, including surveillance footage, forensic results, witness testimonies, and DNA evidence. Ultimately, the jury delivered their verdict. Jonathan Harris was found guilty of first-degree murder. This verdict indicated that the court deemed Harris' actions intentional, carried out with full awareness of their consequences. The announcement of the verdict provoked a torrent of emotions in the courtroom. Christina's relatives erupted in tears, embracing one another. They expressed gratitude to the prosecutors, police, and all those who worked on the case for restoring justice. Harris, in contrast, maintained an outward calm, although his attorneys attempted to assert the possibility of an appeal. For them, it was a defeat, but the outcome of the case was virtually predetermined by the abundance of evidence and the severity of the charges. A few days after the verdict, a hearing was held in which the judge delivered the sentence. Harris was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge noted that the brutality of the crime, its intentional nature, and the defendant's lack of remorse rendered a more lenient sentence impossible. In his statement, the judge extended condolences to Christina's family, emphasizing that her life was cut short by a ruthless act of violence. He also remarked that this case serves as a reminder of the necessity to combat recidivism and enhance monitoring of such individuals. Following the sentencing, Christine Carlin Craft's case sparked widespread public discourse. Many discussed safety issues, particularly concerning women living alone. Calls for enhanced protective measures and improved surveillance systems in residential complexes emerged. Christina's family expressed satisfaction with the sentence but noted that no punishment could restore her life. They urged the public to remember Christine as a vibrant, kind, and talented woman whose life ended too soon. After the conclusion of the trial, Christine Carlin Craft's name continued to resonate not only in connection with her tragic demise but also as a symbol of hope and a reminder of the importance of safeguarding women's rights. Her death left a profound impact on the hearts of her loved ones, friends, and the entire modeling industry. Overcoming the pain of loss, Christina's family decided to immortalize her memory. They established a charitable foundation in her honor, aimed at supporting women facing violence and threats. This foundation organized lectures, self-defense training, and awareness campaigns addressing safety issues. Christina's relatives also participated in initiatives aimed at improving legislative frameworks. They advocated for stricter monitoring of repeat offenders and enhanced preventive measures against violent crimes. The modeling community also took action. Christina's colleagues and friends organized charity fashion shows in her memory. The funds raised during these events were directed toward supporting educational programs for young women aspiring to careers in the fashion industry. Her story inspired many designers and photographers who used their creativity to express support and respect for her life. A well-known magazine featured a photo shoot dedicated to Christine, showcasing her colleagues working on projects she once dreamed of realizing. Some time after her passing, a documentary aired on television, focusing on Christina's life and career. The film highlighted not only her achievements but also the personal struggles she faced while navigating the challenges of the industry and life in a big city. This project served as an opportunity to remind people of the importance of maintaining humanity and caring for others, even in a world filled with competition and pressure. Every year, on her birthday, Christina's friends and family gathered to celebrate her vibrant life. These gatherings have become not only a way to honor her memory but also a reminder of the importance of cherishing every moment and protecting those in need. The story of Christine Carlin Craft is not merely a tragedy but a lesson for society about the fragility of human life and the necessity of remaining vigilant. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew her and in the actions inspired by her life. In March 2019, when prison guards discovered the lifeless body of Luis Romero in his cell at the Corcoran Correctional Facility, they were confronted with a scene that shocked even the most seasoned members of the penitentiary system. The crime was so brutal and inhumane that its details were not immediately disclosed to the public. It later emerged that Romero's cellmate, Jamie Osuna, had not only taken his life but had also committed acts of barbaric cruelty that drew parallels with ancient ritualistic executions. This murder marked the culmination of a bloody path that had begun long before Osuna's incarceration. Jamie Osuna, whose face was adorned with bizarre tattoos, including an intricate mask etched into his skin, became a symbol of horror for the public. He was dubbed the man with 1,000 faces due to his sinister appearance and his ability to exploit the fears of those around him. Osuna made no attempt to conceal his violent nature. On the contrary, he flaunted it with pride, mocking the families of his victims and refusing to show any remorse. This narrative is not merely about a serial killer, it is a tale of how a person, confronted with violence in childhood, grows to become a monster capable of unimaginable acts of cruelty. It is a story of how the justice system failed to recognize and prevent the tragedies spawned by his behavior. Ultimately, it is a reflection on the very nature of evil, which continues to evoke fear, intrigue, and countless questions. Jamie Osuna was born in 1988 in Bakersfield, California, to a family that could hardly be described as stable. His mother, Michelle, was a young woman struggling to cope with poverty and personal issues. Jamie's father abandoned the family shortly after his birth, leaving the boy without a male role model to guide him on the right path. When Jamie turned 5, Michelle remarried. The new stepfather, Jeff, became a source of not only harsh discipline but also genuine violence for the boy. According to Osuna's own recollections, Jeff frequently resorted to corporal punishment that exceeded reasonable bounds. The boy was punished for the slightest infractions, and sometimes even without cause he was tied to a tree in the yard, beaten with a belt, and humiliated. This fostered in the child a profound sense of fear and simultaneous hatred for the world around him. Jamie's school years were marked by academic struggles and behavioral issues. Teachers described him as a withdrawn and aggressive child who found it difficult to connect with his peers. Psychologists who worked with Osuna in his youth speculated that he might have suffered from mental disorders stemming from early trauma. However, the family did not seek professional help, choosing instead to ignore the warning signs of impending disaster. By the age of 12, Jamie's behavior began to change dramatically. He started to avoid home, often running to the streets, where he quickly found companionship among local gang members. In this environment, Osuna was first exposed to violence, which would later become an inseparable part of his life. He engaged in fights, drug dealing, and robberies, striving to assert himself among his peers. At 15, he was arrested for the first time for assault with a deadly weapon. This arrest did not serve as a lesson, rather, it intensified his desire to break the law. By this time, his relationship with his mother had deteriorated completely. Michelle blamed herself for failing to provide her son with love and support, yet felt powerless to change the situation. Osuna, in turn, began to perceive everyone around him as enemies. His tattoos, initially small inscriptions, later evolving into larger designs, became symbols of his rejection of society and its established norms. A pivotal moment in Osuna's life came when he transitioned from petty delinquency to genuine violence. In one incident, he brutally assaulted a man who dared to argue with him in a bar. This episode led to yet another arrest, but the judicial system once again imposed only a brief sentence. Upon his release, Osuna returned to the streets, now even more embittered. By the end of his teenage years, Jamie had become a loner, feared even by members of street gangs. His behavior was unpredictable, and his level of aggression continued to escalate. No one knew what lay beneath his calm exterior, but within him, a predator was already taking shape, poised to deliver the first fatal blow. On November 13, 2011, in Bakersfield, California, a typical autumn evening unfolded. However, at the El Morocco Motel, that day culminated in a horrifying discovery that shocked both the city's residents and the police. In one of the rooms, the body of 36-year-old Yvette Pena, a mother of 6, was found. The corpse was in a horrific state, numerous wounds, blunt force trauma, and signs of strangulation. The police officers who arrived at the crime scene immediately realized they were dealing with a killer for whom violence was not merely a tool but an end in itself. Yvette Pena was known to many in the area. A woman battling addiction, she occasionally spent nights in inexpensive motels. The last time she was seen alive was the evening before, when she entered her room. Signs of a struggle and items strewn chaotically around the room indicated that Pena had attempted to defend herself, but the assailant proved stronger. The police promptly began interviewing witnesses, striving to piece together the sequence of events. Within a few days, the investigation focused on one individual, 23-year-old Jamie Osuna. He was apprehended near the crime scene and exhibited suspicious behavior. Witnesses claimed to have seen him with Yvette just hours before her death. The questions posed by the police elicited only smirks from Osuna. He did not confess to the murder, but his words left little doubt about his involvement. "I was the last one with her. The rest is irrelevant." When detectives searched Osuna's residence, they uncovered a plethora of alarming evidence. Among the items were knives, blood-stained clothing, and journals in which he detailed his fascination with violence. These writings became crucial evidence not only of his involvement in Yvette's murder but also of his propensity for committing similar crimes in the future. Despite the growing body of evidence, the case of Osuna progressed slowly. His attorney contended that the defendant could not be the murderer due to the absence of direct proof. However, experts who examined his records and behavior concluded that Jamie Osuna was a dangerous individual, capable of cold-blooded actions. 6 years later, in 2017, Osuna pleaded guilty. During the trial, he continued to exhibit a blatant disregard for those around him. As the family of Yvette Pena recounted their suffering, Osuna openly laughed. He stated that he felt no remorse for the events that transpired, adding, "I relish seeing people in fear. Fear makes me stronger." Consequently, Osuna was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Yet this punishment did not deter him, rather, it marked a new chapter in his life, one where he could unleash his destructive nature. The trial of Jamie Osuna commenced in 2017, 6 years after the murder of Yvette Pena. This delay was attributed to the complexities of the investigation, numerous appeals, and requests from the defense. Nevertheless, the very persona of the accused became the focal point for both the court and the public. He was a man who did not conceal his involvement in the crime and reveled in the attention directed towards him. At first glance, the courtroom appeared to be an ordinary venue for the administration of justice. However, Osuna's presence transformed each session into a terrifying spectacle. His face was adorned with tattoos, including symbolic skulls and demonic imagery. Yet the most chilling aspect was the lines carved into his face, creating the illusion of a mask. This visage became his calling card and a means to instill fear in others. From the outset of the proceedings, Osuna behaved provocatively. He gazed at witnesses and the judge with a smirk, interrupted attorneys, and made inappropriate remarks. A particularly painful moment arose during the testimony of Yvette Pena's family. Her mother, barely holding back tears, recounted how the loss of her daughters shattered their lives. Instead of expressing sympathy, Osuna laughed ostentatiously, inciting a wave of outrage in the courtroom. At one hearing, he declared, "I am not a monster, I am an artist. What I do is art. It is a way to express myself." These words were utilized by the prosecution as evidence that Osuna not only recognized his actions but also derived pleasure from them. Forensic evaluations indicated that he was mentally sound and aware of the consequences of his actions. This precluded the possibility of a defense based on insanity, marking a significant turning point in the trial. The prosecution presented compelling evidence of his guilt, including surveillance footage showing Osuna with Yvette Pena, as well as forensic results confirming the presence of her blood on his clothing. However, the most potent argument came from his own words. In diaries seized during a search, he detailed how he relished inflicting pain and likened himself to mythical beings that feed on fear. The trial culminated in a verdict of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the reading of the sentence, the judge addressed Osuna, stating, "You are the embodiment of evil. Your life in prison will serve as a reminder that justice exists." Despite the harsh sentence, Osuna appeared satisfied. He even thanked the court for acknowledging his persona, asserting that finally, "They see me for who I truly am." This trial became not only a punishment for Osuna but also a harbinger of future events. His behavior, display of violence, and contempt for societal norms fostered an atmosphere of fear that would later reflect on his life in prison. Following the sentencing, Jamie Osuna was transferred to one of California's most secure prisons, the California State Prison, Corcoran, located in Kings County. This facility was renowned for its stringent security measures and harsh conditions, designed for inmates deemed extremely dangerous. Yet even in such an environment, Osuna managed to stand out and become a legend among fellow inmates. From the first days of his incarceration, he captured the attention of those around him with his behavior. Despite his life sentence, Osuna exhibited neither remorse nor fear of his fate. He continued to showcase his affinity for violence and shock those around him. His tattoos grew increasingly grim and menacing, transforming his face into a sinister mask. Among inmates and guards, he earned the moniker the Man with 1,000 Faces not only for his appearance but also for his ability to manipulate those around him, adopting different personas depending on the situation. Within the prison, Osuna carved out his place in the hierarchy, swiftly earning a reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable individual. He evoked a mixture of fear and respect among other inmates, often openly mocking their weaknesses. Prison psychologists attempted to engage with him, but their efforts proved futile. Osuna evaded serious discussions, preferring to respond with sarcasm or silence. One of his most talked about habits was collecting newspaper articles and photographs related to murders and serial killers. In his cell, he created a macabre gallery of horrors, to which he added his own drawings. In some of these, he depicted himself as a harbinger of fate, surrounded by symbols of death. The prison guards could not overlook his influence. Osuna understood how to manipulate them, evoking either fear or curiosity. Some staff members admitted to feeling uneasy in his presence, even through the protective glass. He was willing to sit for hours opposite a guard, studying him intently and smiling silently, which made them anxious. However, his true nature revealed itself in his interactions with other inmates. In 2017, shortly after arriving at Corcoran, he became notorious for his involvement in a conflict with a group of prisoners who attempted to subjugate him. The assault, during which Osuna not only fought back but also inflicted serious injuries on one of his adversaries, served as further evidence of his brutality. Following this incident, he was regarded with even greater caution. His time in prison also solidified his hatred for society and intensified his inclination towards violence. In one interview, he stated, "Prison is not a punishment for me. It is my home. Here, I can be myself." This mindset elucidated his behavior. For Osuna, incarceration became not a punishment but a platform for the continued exhibition of his dark nature. He rejected rehabilitative programs and psychiatric assistance, asserting that his mind was in order. A new phase of his criminal career commenced in prison, culminating in one of the most heinous acts of violence committed behind bars. He was assigned a cellmate, but the administration's decision proved fateful. This individual, Luis Romero, soon became yet another victim of Osuna. In 2019, the Corcoran Prison Administration decided to assign Jamie Osuna a cellmate. This individual was Luis Romero, a 44-year-old inmate serving a lengthy sentence for a murder committed in his adolescence. He had spent the majority of his life behind bars, striving to avoid conflicts. However, sharing a cell with Osuna turned out to be a catastrophic mistake for Romero. This grave error stemmed from a blatant oversight. The prison administration failed to consider Osuna's reputation as a dangerous and aggressive inmate. Correctional staff later admitted that they saw no grounds for isolating Jamie, despite his repeated displays of aggression. The decision to pair him with another inmate was made based on overcrowding and the need to optimize space. On March 9, 2019, guards discovered a horrifying scene. Luis Romero's body lay on the bed in the cell, but what Osuna had done to him horrified even the most seasoned prison staff. Romero had been decapitated, and his face was brutally disfigured. One of his eyes had been removed, along with a portion of his lung. The victim's hands were bound with makeshift ropes, and his head was adorned with a grotesque improvisation resembling a crown. Knives crafted by Osuna from razors and metal objects he had secretly collected over the months leading up to the crime played a pivotal role in this atrocity. These homemade instruments of murder enabled him to commit an act of unimaginable brutality without attracting the guards' attention. The guards patrolling the block noticed nothing unusual on the night of the murder. The cell housing Osuna and Romero remained locked until morning. When staff finally entered, they initially failed to grasp the extent of the tragedy. Only later, when investigators and experts were summoned, did the horrifying details emerge. In response to the investigation's inquiries, Jamie Osuna maintained his habitual smirk. He confessed to the murder, but his words left no doubt that he felt no remorse. "It was an act of art. I made it special. You understand that people will remember this." The investigation confirmed that Osuna acted with incredible precision and calculation. Psychologists analyzing his behavior noted that he found in violence not merely satisfaction but a form of self-expression. His speech was replete with bizarre metaphors, and his descriptions of the murder sounded as though he took pride in his actions. This case sparked immense public outcry. The media characterized Osuna as one of the most brutal criminals in California's history. The prison administration faced severe criticism for allowing a murder to occur in a maximum security setting. Luis Romero's family filed a lawsuit against the prison, accusing its leadership of negligence. In their statement, the family asserted, "They knew who they were dealing with. Osuna should have been isolated, but instead, they allowed him to kill our brother." This incident prompted an internal investigation that uncovered numerous violations in the system of security and inmate control. The prison administration publicly acknowledged its error, but this did not restore Luis Romero's life. Meanwhile, for Osuna, this murder marked yet another step in his grim career. He solidified his image as a person capable of unimaginable cruelty and continued to leverage his notoriety to intimidate those around him. His confession to the murder did not result in additional sentences, as he was already serving a life term. However, his actions initiated a new legal process concerning the potential imposition of the death penalty. Following the shocking murder of Luis Romero in 2019, public and judicial attention once again turned to Jamie Osuna. The question of his mental health became central in subsequent proceedings. The crime, committed within a maximum security prison, raised numerous concerns about how an individual exhibiting clear signs of aggression and a propensity for violence could remain in a general population cell. Immediately after the incident, Osuna was transferred to an isolated unit, where he was under constant surveillance. Prison psychologists and experts commenced an intensive examination of his personality to ascertain whether he comprehended the ramifications of his actions and was fit to stand trial for Romero's murder. The initial findings were ambiguous. On one hand, he displayed a high level of intelligence and a complete understanding of his actions. On the other, his statements and behavior indicated severe psychological disturbances. During one of his discussions with psychologists, Osuna declared, "I am not merely a man. I am something greater. Violence is my nature, and you cannot change it." The evaluation revealed that Osuna suffered from narcissistic personality disorder, as well as potential antisocial disorder. However, experts were divided on whether this was a sufficient basis to declare him insane. The defense argued that his childhood trauma, abuse, and evident mental disorders rendered him incapable of recognizing his actions. Conversely, the prosecution contended that Osuna had meticulously planned Romero's murder and acted with full awareness of the consequences. In January 2021, the court ruled to temporarily suspend the proceedings in Romero's case to allow for further psychiatric evaluation. The defendant's advocates asserted that their client should not be held accountable for his actions, as he lives in his own world. This elicited mixed reactions from both the public and the victim's family, who believed that Osuna was merely manipulating the system. In February of the same year, experts presented a new report declaring Osuna competent to participate in the trial. The conclusion was based on the assertion that he understood he had committed murder and was aware of its consequences. This decision revived the case, and prosecutors once again sought the death penalty for him. Alongside the judicial proceedings concerning Romero's case, new charges loomed over Osuna. Several prison staff members reported that he had assaulted them during his confinement in isolation. In one instance, he wielded a sharp object to threaten a guard, demanding more time for outdoor exercise. This incident only intensified calls for Osuna's isolation, as he became increasingly dangerous even under strict supervision. In June 2022, following another round of court hearings, Osuna's defense once again attempted to demonstrate that his mental state precluded the imposition of the death penalty. The attorney stated, "This man is a product of a system that broke him in childhood. He was not born a monster, he was made into one." However, prosecutors countered that, despite a difficult upbringing, Osuna had chosen the path of violence and exhibited no remorse whatsoever. They pointed to his journals, drawings, and statements made during interrogations as evidence that he reveled in his reputation as a killer. In December 2023, the court declined to impose the death penalty on Jamie Osuna, upholding a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The decision was met with mixed reactions. For Romero's family, it was yet another blow, as they had hoped for the maximum punishment. However, human rights advocates noted that Osuna would remain in strict isolation, preventing any potential harm to others. Despite the ruling, Jamie Osuna's case is far from concluded. His name continues to evoke fear and revulsion, and the numerous violations within the correctional system uncovered during the investigation have become the subject of significant reforms. The case of Jamie Osuna garnered widespread attention not only due to his crimes but also because of the myriad questions it raised for society and the justice system. The public was divided. Some viewed Osuna as the embodiment of evil deserving of the harshest penalties, while others believed that his behavior was a consequence of the system's failure to protect him in childhood and rehabilitate him in adulthood. As the media began to extensively cover his story, Jamie Osuna became a true sensation. His appearance, a tattooed face and a chilling smile, instantly made him a subject of interest not only for journalists but also for the general public. Internet forums and social media were flooded with discussions about his persona, while documentaries and podcasts dedicated to his crimes amassed millions of views. Osuna's image became a symbol of the extreme manifestations of human cruelty. However, in this narrative, the focus was not solely on him, but also on the vulnerabilities of the system. The first target of criticism was the prison administration, which allowed the murder of Luis Romero to occur under strict supervision. The subsequent investigation revealed a series of violations. Among the primary issues were: 1. Staff shortages. Many guards simultaneously monitored multiple blocks, resulting in a diminished level of oversight over the inmates. On the night of Romero's murder, the surveillance of the cells was minimal. 2. Misassessment of threats. Despite numerous warnings regarding Osuna's aggressive behavior, he was left in general population cells and not transferred to permanent isolation. 3. Overcrowding in prisons. Corcoran, like many other prisons in California, faced a severe shortage of space, forcing the administration to house incompatible inmates together. These issues prompted a lawsuit filed by Luis Romero's family against the California Department of Corrections. The family sought financial compensation and reforms to prevent the recurrence of such tragedies. During the hearings for this case, the Romero family's attorney emphasized, "If the prison system cannot protect individuals even behind bars, how can it guarantee safety beyond them?" This question became a catalyst for extensive discussions within society. Numerous experts began to investigate why acts of violence occur so frequently in American prisons. One conclusion drawn was that many institutions are underfunded, and rehabilitation programs for inmates are either non-existent or ineffective. Amidst the public, another wave of criticism emerged directed at the justice system as a whole. Many questioned how a person like Osuna could not only survive within the system but continue to pose a threat to others. Some argued that the death penalty could have prevented his further crimes, while others pointed to the necessity of enhanced psychiatric care for dangerous inmates. Human rights organizations, in turn, utilized Osuna's case as an argument against the excessive brutality of the American prison system. They contended that solitary confinement and harsh conditions not only failed to rehabilitate individuals but also fostered the development of their darkest traits. One representative of the organization stated, "Monsters are not born, they are made. We allow the system to transform traumatized individuals into killing machines." Osuna's story also sparked immense interest among criminal psychology researchers. Professors and practicing psychologists began to delve deeply into his behavior, attempting to understand what precisely shaped him. Many concluded that a combination of factors underpinned his actions: a troubled childhood, mental illness, an early propensity for violence, and the system's failure to intervene in a timely manner. Meanwhile, Jamie Osuna continued to be a figure evoking fear and revulsion. He received numerous interview requests from journalists but chose only those whom he claimed understood his artistry. These rare interviews confirmed that Osuna had no intention of altering his views or behavior. In one such conversation, he stated, "I do not regret what I have done. I see it as part of my life. My life is chaos, and I embrace it." By 2024, the discussion surrounding Osuna's case led to several significant reforms. The California prison system increased its budget for psychiatric care for inmates and improved isolation conditions for the most dangerous among them. However, these measures could not erase the memory of the horrific crimes that became emblematic of systemic failures. The case of Jamie Osuna left a profound mark on society, not only due to the monstrous cruelty of his crimes but also because of the questions it raised about the nature of evil, the role of the justice system, and the importance of psychiatric assistance. It became a litmus test, revealing weaknesses not only in the penal system but also in the mechanisms for preventing violence. The persona of Jamie Osuna, his behavior, and his statements provoke contemplation about what shapes such individuals. Is evil an inherent quality, or is it a product of the environment in which a person grows? In Osuna's case, it is evident that his childhood, rife with violence and cruelty, played a pivotal role. However, one must also consider the personal choices he made in adulthood. Psychologists and criminologists note that Osuna exhibited traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and antisocial personality disorder. Yet, his admiration for violence and complete lack of remorse indicate a conscious acceptance of his role as a destroyer. He referred to himself as a death artist, suggesting that he viewed his actions not merely as crimes but as something that elevated him above others. Osuna stands as a stark example of how the system can fail to rehabilitate and isolate dangerous individuals. His journey from a mere street thug to a serial killer was marked by numerous moments when intervention could have altered the course of events. Yet, as is often the case, the system's response was belated. Only after his prison crimes did discussions about the necessity for change begin. The primary lesson from this case is the understanding of the importance of risk assessment. Jamie Osuna was a clear threat even under strict supervision, and yet he managed to commit murder within one of California's most secure prisons. This demonstrated that the system requires additional mechanisms to address individuals who pose a danger not only to society but also to other inmates. Despite all his brutality, Osuna's persona continues to captivate attention. His image has become part of popular culture, both frightening and mesmerizing. For some, he embodies the dark side of human nature. For others, he serves as a warning of what can occur if societal issues are ignored. The media, despite accusations of sensationalism, played a crucial role in highlighting this case. They raised questions that are rarely discussed openly: how to deal with individuals who are resistant to rehabilitation, how to protect society from those who view violence as a means of self-expression. These questions remain relevant to this day. As of 2024, Jamie Osuna remains in strict isolation, his life confined to a prison cell. He can no longer directly threaten others, but his story continues to influence public consciousness. It serves as a reminder that evil can take many forms, and combating it requires not only punishment but also a profound understanding of its roots. The California justice system has drawn lessons from this case. Enhanced monitoring of dangerous inmates, improved working conditions for prison staff, and expanded psychiatric care programs have all been direct consequences of the events surrounding Osuna. However, the effectiveness of these measures remains to be seen over time. The case of Jamie Osuna is more than just a story about a serial killer. It is a warning that violence, if ignored, can grow like a disease, affecting not only the perpetrator but also the entire system that was meant to stop him. It is a grim yet vital lesson for a society facing the challenges of combating cruelty and indifference.
February 19, 2020, began like any ordinary morning in the suburb of Brisbane, Camp Hill. For Hannah Clark, this morning also appeared mundane. She was helping her children prepare for school. Little did anyone know that this seemingly routine school run would culminate in tragedy. This tragedy shook Australia to its core. Thousands, upon learning of the events, pondered a singular question: how could this happen? Hannah had repeatedly sought help from friends and law enforcement alike. Why was no one able to protect her? Hannah Clark's story became a symbol in the fight against domestic violence. It compelled people to reflect on the fact that issues of control and cruelty within the home could affect anyone, even the strongest and kindest individuals. Hannah Clark, born Baxter, was raised in Brisbane, Australia. She was the eldest daughter in a loving family and stood out from a young age for her vivacity and strength of character. Her parents, Lloyd and Sue Clark, were always proud of their daughter. She was energetic, determined, and incredibly attuned to those around her. Hannah grew up in an atmosphere of understanding and support. The Clark family lived harmoniously, often spending time together on picnics or traveling. From an early age, Hannah engaged in sports and was passionate about gymnastics. This hobby not only allowed her to unlock her potential, but also fortified her character. Training instilled in her discipline, perseverance, and teamwork. In her teenage years, she became a role model for many of her peers. Hannah possessed natural beauty, yet she refused to let it be her sole attribute. Her smile, openness, and willingness to help others endeared her to everyone. Later, she began coaching younger children, sharing her gymnastics knowledge, which brought her genuine joy. However, despite her outward optimism and success, Hannah was, like everyone, a person with her own hopes and fears. She dreamed of a simple yet happy life, to build a family surrounded by love and care, to raise children, and to pursue her passions. No one, including herself, could foresee the challenges that lay ahead. When Hannah met Rowan Baxter in 2008, she was just over 20 years old. At that time, she had no inkling that this man would become the love of her life. Rowan was 11 years her senior and exuded the charm of a charismatic, self-assured man. By then, he had already concluded his career in professional rugby, having played for the New Zealand Warriors, earning a reputation as a robust and disciplined athlete. After retiring from sports, he sought his path in various fields, including personal training and the fitness industry. Their initial meetings were romantic, with Rowan actively courting Hannah, emphasizing how special she was. For a young woman yearning for love and a strong family, these relationships seemed to herald the beginning of something beautiful. Although Hannah's family supported her choice, they soon began to notice troubling signs. Yet, as is often the case, love in its early stages obscures any doubts. Gradually, the relationship with Rowan grew increasingly serious. He captivated not only Hannah, but also her loved ones, presenting himself as caring and responsible. The couple married in 2012. From that moment, Hannah's life began to change, though not in the direction she had envisioned. After the wedding, Rowan increasingly intruded into Hannah's life. He began to distance her from close friends, claiming it was better for her to spend time solely with him. This was framed as concern, but in reality, it was an attempt at control. Hannah's parents did not immediately recognize this dynamic, but soon they felt that their daughter was sharing her thoughts and feelings with them less frequently. From the outset, Rowan was a man accustomed to dominance. This manifested not only in his personal life, but also in his views on family. He believed that a man should be the leader, while a woman should follow his directives. At that time, Hannah still tried to justify his behavior, viewing it as a manifestation of strong character. After their marriage, Hannah and Rowan moved to Camp Hill, a suburb of Brisbane, to be closer to Hannah's parents. At first glance, their life resembled an idyll. The birth of children marked a significant milestone in their marriage, infusing it with joy and new meanings. In 2013, the couple welcomed their first daughter, Leah. She was a long-awaited child, and Hannah was overjoyed in her new role as a mother. She cared for her daughter with immense love, striving to create an atmosphere of happiness and security. Rowan seemed to share in the joy of fatherhood, yet simultaneously became increasingly demanding. 2 years later, in 2015, their second daughter, Leanna, was born. Now a mother of two, Hannah continued to maintain order in the home and devoted all her energy to raising her daughters. However, the responsibility for household chores and childcare rested almost entirely on her shoulders. Rowan frequently expressed dissatisfaction if things did not meet his expectations, revealing more aggressive traits. In 2016, the family welcomed another child, a little boy named Trey. Hannah loved each of her children unconditionally. She made every effort to raise them in an environment out of care, love, and harmony. Despite the growing difficulties in her relationship with Rowan, she focused on her children's happiness and their future. However, with the birth of Trey, the control and pressure from Rowan intensified. He began to impose even more demands on Hannah. He monitored her time, restricted her interactions with friends and family, and even ordinary outings with the children became a source of conflict if Hannah did not coordinate her plans with her husband. His demeanor was deceptively quiet. Rowan did not always raise his voice, but his words and tone consistently conveyed that he considered himself the head of the family. Close relatives and friends noticed changes in Hannah's life. She began to communicate less frequently with her friends, reduced her sports activities, and rarely shared what was happening at home. Lloyd and Sue Clark tried to support their daughter as best they could, but Rowan skillfully isolated her even from them. He sought to create the impression that the Clark family was interfering in their relationship and convinced Hannah to maintain distance. To the outside world, the Baxter family appeared ordinary. They posted photos on social media where they smiled and spent time with their children. Rowan wanted their life to seem flawless in the eyes of others. Hannah devoted herself entirely to her children, striving to provide them with the best childhood possible. She played with them, taught them kindness, told them stories, and sang lullabies. In her eyes, these moments with her children compensated for any pain she experienced in her marriage. At the same time, Rowan began to reveal himself as a harsh and sometimes unreasonable father. He established strict rules that the children were expected to follow and became irritated if anything deviated from his plans. His manner of communication with the children was abrupt, lacking the gentleness they saw in their mother. Hannah often tried to protect them from their father's rudeness, but this only led to new disputes and conflicts. Despite all the difficulties, Hannah believed for a long time that she could cope. She tried not to show her pain to those around her, holding on for the sake of her children. She felt that if she remained patient and strong enough, she could overcome all trials and preserve her family. But the tension continued to escalate. Living under constant control and fear was destroying Hannah from within. She increasingly contemplated the fact that this marriage no longer brought happiness to either her or her children. Yet, thoughts of separating from Rowan seemed terrifying. She did not know how to protect herself and her children if she left him. This fear kept her trapped for several more years. Over the years, Hannah became increasingly aware that her marriage to Rowan was far from ideal. What had initially seemed like care transformed over time into total control. His desire to dictate every aspect of her life became unbearable. It gradually became evident that Rowan did not view Hannah as an equal partner, but rather as someone who should completely submit to his will. Rowan's control extended to virtually everything. Hannah could not leave the house without informing him of her destination and purpose. He monitored her phone calls, checked her messages, and even demanded explanations if she received letters or notifications. Initially, she tried to resist, but this only provoked his outbursts of anger. Rowan could lecture her for hours, accusing her of disrespect and ingratitude. Particularly difficult were the moments when Rowan resorted to open aggression. Although physical violence was not frequent, his emotional and psychological pressure shattered Hannah from within. He belittled her, claiming that she had achieved nothing in life and that without him, she was a nobody. Such words gradually eroded her self-esteem, causing her to doubt her worth. By the end of 2019, Hannah realized that continuing to live with Rowan had become unbearable. His behavior had long since crossed the line of acceptability, and the children began to notice his outbursts of anger and the tension in the home. Hannah felt that she could no longer pretend. She understood that if she stayed, she would not only destroy her own life, but also jeopardize her children's future. The decision to leave was not easy for her. Each time she began to contemplate leaving Rowan, fear would paralyze her. He had repeatedly threatened that if she left, he would take the children. "You will never see them again," he would say, making Hannah shudder at the prospect of losing her most precious treasures. These words kept her trapped, forcing her to endure. However, gradually, her love for her children outweighed her fear. She realized that they would not have a normal childhood if they remained in that house, filled with tension and conflict. In November 2019, Hannah made up her mind. She took the children and moved in with her parents, Lloyd and Sue Clark, who had always supported her. For Hannah, this was a monumental step. She knew that Rowan would not let this go unchallenged. Indeed, his reaction was immediate and furious. From the moment of the separation, Rowan began a campaign of harassment. He called daily, sent messages, and showed up at Hannah's parents' house, demanding to meet. He pleaded for her to return, promising to change, but simultaneously threatened her if she refused. This behavior was characteristic of Rowan. Manipulation and pressure were his primary tools. Hannah tried to remain strong. She began working with a psychologist to cope with the effects of the psychological abuse she had endured for years. Her parents were her support, helping with the children and creating a space where she could feel safe. However, even this could not fully shield her from Rowan. One of the most challenging moments for Hannah was dealing with the children's questions. Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey were too young to understand what was happening between their parents. They loved both their mother and father and asked why they no longer lived together. Hannah tried to speak to them honestly, yet gently, explaining that sometimes adults decide to live apart to be happier. It was important to her that the children did not feel guilty. Meanwhile, Rowan continued to intensify the pressure. He filed a lawsuit seeking joint custody of the children. For Hannah, this was a devastating blow. She knew that Rowan would not be a good father, especially after he had revealed his cruel side. However, the law required that his claims be considered, and Hannah was compelled to meet with him again at the hearings. Each encounter with Rowan was fraught with threats and humiliation. He accused her of destroying the family, labeled her a bad mother, and even threatened to take the children abroad. Hannah sought help from the police, but their ability to protect her was limited. Rowan was cautious. He left no clear evidence of his threats, avoiding direct physical violence after their separation. Despite this, Hannah continued to fight. She obtained a temporary restraining order, limiting Rowan's contact with the children and prohibiting him from approaching her home. This provided her with a brief respite, but did not eliminate the danger. Rowan became increasingly unpredictable. He ignored the restrictions, appeared near her parents' house, stalked her around town, and attempted to manipulate the children. One of the most distressing moments was when he began using the children as a means to hurt Hannah. He told Aaliyah and Liana that their mother was preventing him from seeing them, trying to sow doubt and resentment in their hearts. This deeply wounded Hannah, who was striving to maintain the children's relationship with their father despite his behavior. By December 2019, the situation had escalated. Rowan was becoming more aggressive, and Hannah began to fear for her safety. It became clear to her that the threats he had previously voiced could escalate into actions. She tried to minimize contact with him, but each new encounter, whether in court or in daily life, brought her new stress. Hannah longed to start anew. She dreamed of returning to work, continuing to coach the children in gymnastics, and providing them with a happy future. Yet every step she took was met with resistance from Rowan, who could not accept that he had lost control over her. By early 2020, Rowan Baxter's behavior had become more dangerous and unpredictable. His aggression intensified daily, especially as he realized that Hannah was firmly resolved not to return. He no longer limited himself to phone calls and text messages. Now he actively stalked her, creating scenes outside her parents' house, where Hannah had moved with the children. Hannah did everything possible to ensure her and her children's safety. The restraining order against Rowan was in effect, but he frequently violated it. One such violation occurred when he unexpectedly appeared at the school playground where the children were playing. Under various pretenses, he attempted to interact with them, instilling terror in Hannah. Rowan knew all too well that psychological pressure on Hannah through the children was his most potent weapon. She lived in constant fear that he might harm them. Hannah reported to the police every time Rowan violated the order. However, the legal measures that could protect her proved insufficiently effective. Like in many other domestic violence cases, the system responded to each individual violation without considering the broader picture of escalating threats. Rowan skillfully navigated the boundaries of the law, leaving no direct evidence that could justify more stringent measures. One day, Rowan took a particularly terrifying step. He sent Hannah a letter in which he explicitly stated that he would not allow her to destroy his family. The text was rife with implications of violent actions, although he carefully avoided direct threats. This letter was the final straw for Hannah, who realized that he was willing to go to any lengths. She contacted the police again, but they informed her that, despite the overall alarming context, there were no specific grounds for his arrest. The support of her parents was a tremendous help for Hannah. Lloyd and Sue Clark not only defended her, but also assisted in caring for the children. Lloyd often accompanied Hannah when she went out, ensuring she did not feel vulnerable. Nevertheless, even their support could not entirely alleviate the tension. Hannah felt trapped. On one hand, she had done everything to escape Rowan, yet on the other, he still controlled her life through fear. In mid-January 2020, Rowan attempted to meet the children without Hannah's consent. He once again lurked near the school and had tried to speak with Aaliyah. Hannah learned of this later and immediately reported it to the police, but once again, no decisive action was taken. That evening, Rowan left another message on the answering machine saying, "I warned you, Hannah. You brought this on yourself." These words sounded ominous, but proving that they constituted a threat was challenging. Hannah began to share her concerns more frequently with her parents and close friends. She expressed that she felt as though Rowan was preparing for something terrible. Her friends suggested that she leave Brisbane and start anew in another city where Rowan could not find her. However, for Hannah, this was too difficult. The children were in school, she had just begun to settle in after the move, and most importantly, she did not believe that fleeing would fully protect her. Rowan, for his part, was sinking deeper into his obsessions. He felt he was losing control over Hannah and the children, which pushed him toward radical actions. Rowan's friends recalled that he often spoke of how much he hated Hannah for her decision to leave, asserting that she would have to pay for it. A few days before the tragedy, he made one last attempt to persuade Hannah to return. He showed up at her parents' house with flowers and toys for the children. However, Hannah refused to even speak with him, and Lloyd asked him to leave immediately. At that moment, Rowan lost all self-control. He began to scream, accusing Hannah and her parents of ruining his life. This incident ended with yet another call to the police, but Rowan managed to leave before they arrived. A day before the tragedy, he posted on social media a message that would later be regarded as a sinister omen. In this post, he spoke of betrayal and the pain of having the people you love turn away from you. None of his followers, including friends, perceived this text as a signal of the impending catastrophe. During those days, Hannah felt particularly despondent. She confided in her mother that she feared for her children, yet she endeavored to maintain a facade of calm for their sake. February 19th, 2020 began like any other morning for Hannah Clark. She rose early, assisted her children in preparing for school, and made breakfast. Little Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey joyfully discussed the day ahead, while Hannah tried to focus on these happy moments. Despite the wait of recent months, around 8 a.m., Hannah loaded the children into her Kia Sportage, parked near her parents' home, as they were set to head to school. As she pulled onto the road, her attention was drawn to movement in the rearview mirror. It was Rowan. He was following their car, waiting for the opportune moment. He knew Hannah's route by heart and had pre-selected a location for the attack. Turning onto Raven Street in Camp Hill, Hannah halted her vehicle at a red light. It was then that Rowan seized the opportunity. He drove up in his car, leaped out, and rushed towards Hannah's vehicle, holding a canister of gasoline. Before Hannah could react, he doused the car with a flammable liquid through the window and struck a match. The flames engulfed the vehicle instantaneously. Inside, screams erupted. Hannah and her 3 children found themselves trapped in a fiery snare. Witnesses reported that Rowan blocked the doors to prevent anyone from escaping. Bystanders nearby immediately noticed the fire and rushed to the burning car. They attempted to help, but the flames spread too rapidly. They managed to pull Hannah out, who miraculously managed to open the door and escape. However, her body was nearly entirely engulfed in flames. Hannah cried out, "He poured gasoline on us. He set us on fire." Her words shocked everyone present. People tried to comfort her, call for an ambulance, and do everything possible to assist. However, the children in the back of the car remained inside. The fire was so intense that approaching the vehicle was impossible. Rowan made no attempt to flee. Instead, he stepped back and inflicted a fatal stab wound upon himself. His body was found nearby when emergency services arrived. Hannah was rushed to the nearest hospital in critical condition. Doctors diagnosed her with burns covering 97% of her body. Despite the medical team's efforts, Hannah succumbed a few hours later. She fought for her life until the end, but her injuries were incompatible with survival. The 3 children, Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey, perished at the scene. Their deaths represented an irreplaceable loss for the Clark family and sparked a wave of grief across Australia. This tragedy shook not only those who knew Hannah personally, but also thousands of Stroners who learned of the story through the news. Flowers, toys, and notes began to appear at the site of the tragedy. People from all corners of the country expressed their condolences to Hannah's family, condemning violence and the system's failure to protect her and her children. Meanwhile, an investigation commenced. The police confirmed that the attack had been meticulously planned by Rowan. Additional canisters of gasoline and knives were found in his vehicle, indicating his intent to carry out his plan to the end. This was a crime committed by a man who could not accept that he had lost control over Hannah. News of the tragedy in Camp Hill quickly spread throughout Brisbane and then across Australia. Television channels, newspapers, and social media covered the story, expressing shock and sorrow. The story of Hannah and her children became a symbol of the horrifying consequences of domestic violence that had been ignored by society for far too long. Lloyd and Sue Clark, Hannah's parents, learned of the incident almost immediately. They were devastated. The death of their daughter and 3 grandchildren left them in a state of shock. Social media was flooded with posts bearing the hashtags #Hannah Clark and #Stop Domestic Violence. Thousands of people shared their stories and called on the government to reform laws protecting victims of domestic violence. This marked the beginning of a significant public movement, demanding immediate action from authorities. The police began their investigation right after the tragedy. The first step for investigators was to reconstruct the events of that day using eyewitness accounts and surveillance footage. It was evident that Rowan had meticulously planned his actions. He purchased gasoline at a service station hours before the attack and left farewell notes found in his home. In them, he justified his actions by blaming Hannah for destroying the family. Investigators also examined his communication history with Hannah over the past months. The messages he sent were filled with threats and manipulation. In them, Rowan repeatedly asserted that Hannah had no right to deprive him of his family and that he would go to any lengths to achieve his goals. In the course of the investigation, relatives, friends, and acquaintances of Hannah were interviewed. Her parents recounted that Hannah had repeatedly expressed concerns about threats from Rowan, yet her reports to the police did not result in significant action. Hannah's friends confirmed that she lived in constant fear, striving to provide her children with a normal life. The investigation revealed numerous vulnerabilities within the domestic violence victim protection system. The restraining order intended to safeguard Hannah proved ineffective. Violations of the order were documented, but they did not lead to serious consequences for Rowan. This case compelled society and the government to acknowledge that existing measures were insufficient to prevent violence. Experts in domestic violence advocacy issued statements calling for stricter laws. Among the proposals were increased accountability for violating restraining orders, more thorough handling of threats, and providing victims with access to safe housing. Following the tragedy, Hannah's parents launched a campaign to raise awareness about domestic violence. They established the Small Steps for Hannah Fund, which began engaging in educational and charitable projects aimed at assisting victims of violence. The fund's mission encompassed not only supporting the affected, but also preventive efforts to help individuals recognize early signs of abuse. This initiative garnered immense support. People across Australia donated in memory of Hannah and her children. Some movement participants began conducting training sessions for police officers, social workers, and lawyers to enhance their understanding of how to respond to domestic violence cases. After the conclusion of the police investigation, the fate of the case was handed over to the coroner. The coronial inquiry, which commenced several months after the tragedy, aimed not only to officially establish the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Hannah and her children, but also to determine whether authorities could have prevented the crime. This process attracted significant public interest, as many hoped to find answers to lingering questions. During the hearings, the coroner meticulously examined the events leading up to the tragedy. Testimonies from police officers, friends, and relatives of Hannah, as well as specialists in victim protection, were heard. A crucial part of the investigation included recordings of phone calls, emails, and messages that Rowan sent to Hannah. These materials vividly illustrated how the threats and manipulations escalated. Key evidence comprised recordings of Rowan's conversations with his friends and colleagues. In these discussions, he openly expressed his anger, stating that he would not allow Hannah to win. His words, which might have initially appeared as mere emotional outbursts in the context of the tragedy, revealed his intentions. Particular attention was given to how the police and judicial system responded to Hannah's appeals. The hearings uncovered numerous shortcomings in law enforcement's actions. For instance, it was revealed that Rowan violated the restraining order against Hannah at least 5 times, yet none of these violations led to his arrest. Moreover, he managed to convince some police officers that he was merely trying to mend relations with the family. This fact incited outrage among Hannah's loved ones and the broader public. The story of Hannah Clark and her 3 children, Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey, left an indelible mark on the hearts of millions. While the pain of loss for the Clark family was unimaginable, Their strength and determination to transform tragedy into a lesson for society became a catalyst for change. This chapter is dedicated to how the memory of Hannah and her children influenced Australian society, laws, and attitudes toward the issue of domestic violence. Hannah Clark and her children left behind not only profound sorrow, but also a powerful legacy. Their tragedy became a catalyst for change, enabling many victims to find protection and preventing potential crimes.